Analyst. So my name is Ann Thompson. I am a policy analyst here at the Health Licensing Office, and I oversee, I think, 13 of the boards and programs. Art therapy is one of them. So I have like a little training, and this is for you. So stop me. I talk really fast. I do this a lot. So if you want a point fleshed out, I just kind of put this together because PowerPoints are fun, and it's an opportunity for us to get our minds right about what we're here to do. And there's a couple of slides that are super important. Since your program went into effect, some legislation has added requirements to rulemaking. One of them is the racial equity statement, where we need to really think about these rules. Will they have a positive or negative effect on closing the racial equity gap? They're trying to look at institutional rule racism and say, is this something that will help communities of color not have different outcomes than, more not minority communities? And also, the fiscal impact is also important. We need to think through this whole thing. Will these rules have a positive or negative effect on small business owners, members of the public, licensees, insurance companies, units of government? Would people need more documentation, resources, software, anything to track anything associated with these rules? So just kind of think about what that would cost, if it's an avoidable cost, if there's a different way to get around it. I mean, there's things like we're always going to have to charge a license fee because we got to run the program, right? I mean, regulatory, these investigators need money, right? So anyway, so there's that. And then there's things like, well, if we didn't require that, or if we didn't have to have that, maybe we could mitigate costs, because we always want, Oregon values inclusivity, frugality, and transparency. We want to hit all of those things. So welcome. I'm delirious with happiness that you're all here. So the purpose of a rules advisory committee. I always say this from the beginning, rules don't make anybody happy because everyone has to compromise. Okay, we want to get as much public involvement as possible from as many people who might be affected by the rules, people who will be. Is there a potential? Because we want everyone to tell us in advance if these rules work or don't work. Because the last thing you want to do, this is the rule of law, is put something into practice and someone raises their hand. When this first got started, there was we didn't know until the Rules Advisory Committee met that there was a glitch in the legislation that actually prevented us from getting started on the program. Nobody would qualify the way it was written. So we didn't know that until we got here. So there's great truths that can come out of these things. So you're not really a voting body. You're more feedback, recommendations. You're like the subject matter experts. We say that my draft rules are sort of, I designed a car and you guys are the test drivers. You're going to get in and make sure everything works the way it should work. Again, you're going to provide recommendations on the fiscal impact and the racial impact statement. It is a public meeting in that this will be posted to YouTube. We have to watch our language and all that stuff. But it's because we want people to see the decisions that went into things. And we want to be as transparent as possible. So rulemaking. You guys are going to provide us with advice. I have a draft, and I even made a small change to it this morning. As I look at, you look at it and you look at it, and then you look at it again and you find something, right? So we're going to talk about that today. The regular text is what is, bold is the potential add, strike through is the potential removal. It's sort of the same way as the bill, except the bill, whatever's coming out, is not struck through, it's italic. So they make reading this stuff is sort of a specialty sport. So once we get feedback from you guys, we don't have a board for this program. So what we'll do is we will take all the feedback that you give us, any questions that you ask. We work with the Department of Justice to make sure that we are within our statutory requirements. And then we put things out for public comment. Minimum of 28 days. We are on a tight timeline for this legislation. I have 4 pieces of legislation that are all rolling on Jan 1. So it seems like to kids out there that are making their Santa lists, the end of the year seems so far away. But for us, we're going as hard and as fast as we can. And we want to make sure any issues are worked out here and in the public comment period. We don't want any surprises when we're out of time. Okay, so we have to consider all the public comment. Sometimes people send us things we can't do. I don't think there should be a fee. I don't think it should be. Thank you, but there's nothing, there's things we can't do anything about, right? So 3 branches of government. The legislature makes the laws. We use the phrase bill, which is one of these things. It has a number. We use statutes, which is the 3 numbers dot 3 numbers. Once it goes into the big book, we call them statutes. They're also known as laws, right? We use those terms interchangeably. OAR is Oregon Administrative Rule. ORS is Oregon Revised Statute. If you're not sure what we're talking about, stop me. So we're the executive branch. The legislature tells us to do something and we do it. We are not in a position to push the legislature for anything, ask for any changes. We are the hands. If there's any question about what the legislature meant or what this means, that goes to judicial and they interpret the law. And that's where the money is, right? So laws, rules are laws that are promulgated by agencies. We always say that the laws, the statutes are the foundation of the house. The rules are the walls and the ceiling and all the stuff inside. The law says you need to do something. The rules can say how. How do I do that? Right? And essentially, we need to stay within the law. We can't go too far afield, even if maybe we want to, it's so neutral, right? They might give you the authority to do something. You might want more, you might want less, but that's what we have. And if we're not sure, again, we have 4 DOJ attorneys who work with us. We only have the power that is given to us through statute. As we learned with the art therapy first time around, sometimes bills come to us imperfect. We've had bills come to us where they didn't specifically give us the authority to issue renewals. Now, luckily, we have some overarching statutes that cover all of our programs, and thank goodness we had a bootstrap there. But we did have a bill that came through that said that the board had to issue licenses, not us. So that board had to meet every week until that could be fixed and approve licenses, because every little thing has to specifically be given to us. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's very, very true. So sometimes we'll say, well, it makes more sense if we could do this. If they didn't allow us to, we can't. Okay, any questions? You guys are gold star all the way across. Okay, so again, we have no inherent powers except what they specifically tell us to do. We always say as individuals, you guys can get up in the morning and say, I want to be an art therapist. I want to be a dog walker. I want to be an underwater basket weaver. And you could do it unless you are specifically prohibited because of a crime or something else. We can only do what they tell us to do. We've had some boards who wanted us to collect information on where people worked because it would help them kind of allocate resources. Can't ask that. They tell us specifically what information we can gather. That's it, right? So sometimes it's limiting. So we talked about this. Oregon Revised Statute is a law, 6 digits. Once it's codified, and this is a small version, goes in the big book of many things. OAR looks like a social security number, and that's an Oregon administrative rule. In this, 331 is the division. That's where 331 is where HLO has all of its programs that we oversee. Not boards, some of them are out on their own. And then the 010 is the division, and the 0000 is the specific ruled address, right? So you have the book, the chapter, and the verse. That's how that works. Any questions? You guys are awesome. Okay, so when we're doing our rules, we have to look at what the legislature wanted us to do. So often we talk about intent. What did they want to do when they put the bill into place? We listen to testimony, we listen to the hearings, because if it didn't happen in a hearing, it didn't happen. If it happened in a hallway, it didn't happen, right? And sometimes everybody looks at things differently. And that's why we have definitions in our rules, because bills come with 3 kinds of terms. We always talk about definitions being so important, Like your husband's definition of what a full trash can is might be different from yours. So we want to be very clear. For the purpose of these rules, this means this. Sometimes they give us exact terms in our bills. What's an exact term? You can't debate it. 18 years old, easy to prove, easy to document, 6 feet tall. Okay. 30 business days, easy. And then there's the inexact terms. And this is when your rules start to get a little thicker. A word like weapon. What's that mean? Some hands, pencil would be a weapon. Is it a gun? Is it a bow? I don't know. Pencil. That's when, if your bill said weapon, your rule might have to say, for the purposes of these rules, a weapon is or is not. And then there's delegative terms. These are the ones that send the sweat down your back. Things like of good moral character. Oh, who's going to define that one? Fair. Good cause. Yikes. How do you administer that one? And when you think about our boards, what goes on in our body art board with tattooing and piercing, their definition of good character might be very different from, there are tattoo schools in prison, right? So different from our genetic counselors who are all postdoc and hologram into their research hospitals from the mothership somewhere. So they would have very different definitions. So if the legislature gave us that, we're going to have to say purposes of. Okay. So again, I got some fun slides here. Exact terms, 30 days, super easy. Inexact terms, wildlife. Again, somebody in Alaska, you say wildlife, they're going to think of something very different than somebody in Florida. Okay, so if we have an inexact term, we have to explore that in rule. How do we know? Talked about this. We go back to legislative history. We look at the actual context of the statute. And if that doesn't work, we go to this giant Merriam-Webster's dictionary. I think they have a spotlight on it. It's DOJ. And we actually use the dictionary definition of the word. And I know sometimes in rule, people are like, well, in our community, everybody knows that wildlife means this. If that's not what the legislature said, it can get, that's where some of the rub can come. If we're not sure, again, the phrase is general maxims of statutory construction. That sounds scary, right? It's just, we look at the dictionary and how the word is put together. And when it comes to rules, everything is critical. A comma can mean everything because it could separate two things or it could be two things together, right? So we have to be very careful. But again, that's where we come in. We talked about delegative terms. Sometimes these bills say, well, we don't know, the legislature says we know underwater basket weaving has to be regulated, but we don't know anything about it. So we're going to make a board and y'all figure it out. And we do have some of that today, a little bit. Again, even with delegative terms, we have to stay within the intent of the legislature. I love this slide because I'm a dog person. The legislature, even with delegative terms, can say, okay, folks, here are the bones of a dog. You can make a big dog, little dog, barky dog, fluffy dog, quiet dog. You can't make a cat, even if it makes sense to you. We really, really need a cat. If they want you to make a dog, you got to do that. Does that make sense? This is like civics 101. I know. So again, our statutes need to be our constant guideposts. We're going to keep going back to our bill, and we're going to try to stay within the parameters of what they wanted us to do. Here are the two biggies throughout this whole thing. If you could keep this in the back of your mind, the fiscal impact, because when this comes up in the agenda, tell me positive, negative, how much of the impact will be, in your opinion, if the rule is going to have adverse impact on small businesses, what we can do to mitigate that. It could be positive. It could be more people qualify for licensure. More people will get, will be served. We don't know, but it can be positive, can be negative, but we're going to get to that at the end. I want you guys to be able to be thoroughly familiar with the draft rules before we get into that. And here's the other, this is 2993, the racial equity statement. When I file the rules, I have to include anything that these rules do to affect how people of all races are treated. how the rule will affect the fair, just, and unbiased treatment of people of different races. And sometimes it isn't. Like we just did a rule on an affidavit of licensure for another board. If you don't want to be licensed in another state, you don't have to pay for that service, right? It didn't really have that much of an impact, but sometimes it does. And it is something we have to have a conversation about. And if you want me to bring these slides back up to kind of freshen your mind after we go through it all, I do that as well. So, racial equity statement. We need to think what persons and racial groups are impacted or could be impacted by the rule. Any unintended adverse consequences on racial equity. I need to change the color of the slide. It's brutal. What, if any, positive consequences might have on racial equity? Identify other resources where we might be able to find data or information on this. And if there's not going to be an impact or an indeterminate impact, just tell us why. And that's okay, because I just have to file that with the Secretary of State and the rules. And thank you. My tired kitty slide. So any questions before we get started? You guys are amazing. No? We're all good? Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And I'm going to pull up, if you have any questions, now would be the time. I'm going to pull up the draft rules. And we're going to live wordsmith. We're going to work this through. And we always put the definitions at the beginning because that gets us started and makes sense. But sometimes we don't really know how those words are going to be used until we get later on. So never be afraid to say, I want to go back. Because once you learn something, you might say, this might impact this other section. This is not the Panama Canal. We can turn this boat around and go that way if we have to. Okay. So let me see if we can share this. So here we are. Okay. So if you like, does anyone have any questions about the bill? We get started. Everybody has a copy of it?
Well, I do have a question. Vis-a-vis this meeting. So of course, we'll be focusing on the HLO rules as are listed here.
Sure.
There's some rules in relation to Medicaid reimbursement for various licenses where we looked at the ORs where some modifications to include, for example, just licensed certified art therapist into that language. It lists a number of different licenses. We think that's important, but I don't know if it's in the context of this meeting that we would look at those.
Spectacular question. We only have the authority over which we have, right? So we have the authority over the licensing of it, even though it's probably part of the Oregon Health Authority, which is a gigantic universe, and we're this little satellite over here. That reimbursement part is actually handled by a different part of Oregon Health Authority. It depending on the reimbursement, whether it's third-party Oregon Health Plan, that kind of thing, it could be part of Health Policy and Analytics. It could be part of the Medicaid division. And I only know the vaguest. It's kind of like asking me about a neighborhood in Nebraska. I know there is one, but I don't know much about it. So if you like, if we have time at the end, I can kind of look up and maybe get you into contact with some of these folks, because those things would be handled by a different owner.
Yeah, I think that's just part of the spirit of this bill and even
Absolutely.
legislative intent. So I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we can, and my time is your time. I mean, I tried to make this as brief and intense as possible because everyone's got billable hours and everyone's got a life. But I am here to help you and help your community. So if you want to play the Google game afterwards, we can do that. I might be able to find a person in that unit that I know, and they could let you know because their timetables might be different. Often with these bills, I know there was one for lactation consultants, this part of the program, where they created an entire perinatal cultural program, and DCBS was involved because they had to come up with insurance codes, and they have this whole new thing, and DHS has a piece and OHA has a piece, and everyone has a different machine running and different timelines. So that will be handled, but what their time is on, I'm not exactly sure. But we can play, we can try to find it. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Beautiful. Okay, so if you like, we can scroll through the definitions, not getting too stuck. And then we will get into the bold stuff that's new. And I have areas that I have specifically pulled out in color because they're points of conversation. And there were things when I hit it, I was like, whoa, I wonder what this would look like. Okay, so division 375 is where the whole thing starts. And definitions, art therapist doesn't change. We have a licensed art therapist or a licensed certified art therapist, as those terms are defined, codified. You have a question?
Oh, well, there's also going to be that. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, no, it's fine. I want to be responsive and I'm watching too many screens. So in the definitions, actually that actually takes care of this issue I had down here. In the definitions, we did add the term licensed art therapist in some places to bring it more in alignment with the bill. Okay, so it used to just be called art therapist or certified art therapist. And our attorneys thought for the purposes, again, we're improving as we go, actually putting licensed would be clearer to the public.
I just have a question about that. I brought my license
Mhm.
and it says ART-C and it's referred to as a certified art therapist. Whereas in the language in the legislation, it's referred to as a licensed certified art therapist. So I was curious.
Okay, because I have ATRBC, is that the one you're talking about? And your license says
ART-C.
Well, it's
like a
actually the license number. So
oh, that's because yeah, I know what that's about. We have to put certain codes in our database. And we already have athletic trainers and we already have certain things. And it might be that's what the code was for your license in our database. But this is for actually the credentialing part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to get clarity that referring to myself as a licensed certified art therapist.
Yeah.
I don't know if that can be added to the paperwork.
I can certainly ask. I know sometimes we run out of letters and we run out of numbers, but I'm gonna ask about it's actually the license number. And I can ask our tech gurus who put all of the stuff into the database about acronyms on the licenses. Okay. Because again, I mean, these are the actual rules. These have the power of law. And sometimes when they're entering things into the database, you gotta make adjustments, but I can certainly ask about that. Okay, so when we talk about acronyms, ATCB is the Art Therapy Credentials Board, ATR. Means registered art therapist by this credential board. And then we have the ATRBC. It's the board certified art therapist by the board. Again, we talk about not only what it means, but who issues that. So it's all tied together. Yes.
Need to add the ATRP to this list of definitions.
I think we do.
Okay, so that's fantastic. So it's number 8, we have provisional art therapist. Means a person who's licensed. I didn't know there was going to be an acronym associated with it.
So this falls under the ATCB has an ATRP for provisional.
and this is new, so
Okay.
our bill is sort of adapting to
Yeah, it looks like their change.
positive things to their change. So we would just add ATR-P.
Okay, so. Guys, I'm telling you, good ones.
Their bill, but it also looks like the LBC boards changed too to add the professional associate level. So
Right,
one
okay, so it's called ATRP
dash P.
P. Means,
Provisional.
Let me make sure I get the correct.
I appreciate it. Provisional licensed art therapist or just provisional art therapist?
Yeah.
Therapist that you're looking at.
I'll renumber everything. You don't have to worry about that. Make you sit through that.
It's provisional registered art therapist.
Provisional registered art therapist. Does that get us there?
Mhm.
Okay, and obviously I will have to renumber. The phrase good standing is used in your bill. And to us, that means no unresolved or outstanding disciplinary actions. A licensure year, and again, this is where people get confused between like a calendar year and a licensure year. Our licensure years roll. If you get your license in May, your licensure year is May to the end of April, right? So again, we want to make sure people know what that means. Office is us. Here's our new term, provisional licensed art therapist. That's the language from the bill. Means a person who is licensed by the office to practice art therapy under, this is under your statute, 681, as defined in House Bill 3761, Section 3, and that's from 2025. Okay. Does that work? And if you see anything else that we need to add to that as we go through.
I think in the bill, it's referred to as PLAT.
Of that PLAT?
I believe so. Let's take a look.
We have provisional licensed art therapist. That language is there. Provisional licensed art therapist.
I just wasn't sure if the acronym needed to be spelled out.
Let's see if that comes up, because I think, yeah, let's make a note, ask about the, I'm gonna look at the plat, see if we stumble across an area where we need to use that. So fees. I had originally thought that we might need, we can't really talk about the amounts because those are determined by a matrix. We take how many are licensed and the services that this program takes. You don't have exams we have to create or administer. We don't have to do inspections. You don't have a board to support it. It's a very expensive thing. And you don't have a lot of cases, and also risk management. There are some professions where if somebody makes a mistake, it's going to be expensive. Yours generally is a fairly low risk profession, right? So these were the fees that were assigned to give you a cushion if, I don't exactly know how much money you have right now, if you get a bad case and we have to pursue disciplinary action. If somebody, you can appeal that all the way to the Supreme Court if you want to. And we've had cases go that far, not with your group, and it will wipe you out. Right, so we try to maintain enough of a cushion that the fiscal experts say, if you have a bad case, you can pay for it, you won't go into the negative, but that your expenditures and your revenues are about equal. So you don't become the bank of art therapy either, right? And if that becomes the case, if we get a million trillion licenses, this is just backstory, and we're in a position to offer a discount or something like that, we will. Because we want to keep you guys just enough to cover, but not enough to, lend money to hedge funds. Yes.
Something that we've discussed, following the Oregon Mental Health Regulatory Agency diversity study, they made recommendation, and the licensed professional counselor board reduced the renewal period to biannual. So to kind of reduce load on staff, and also it reduces load the graduates who are managing staff. So we thought that would be something to discuss as well.
Yeah, and we've heard that from a number of places that would be helpful. Unfortunately, the statutes that HLO operates under, everything is yearly. Everything is yearly. Yes, we have the Oregon fiscal year, which is July 1 through June. And we have the calendar year, and we have licensure years. Everything is on an annual basis. And I believe, and this was when HLO was invented back in the dark ages, the idea was administering programs equally and having money come in on a fairly regular basis to make any sort of fiscal corrections. Right? This was the legislature's idea. That if you don't go so far, you don't have a big correction to have to make. But anyway, everything that they gave us is annual. And we try to keep that in mind if we have some boards with national certifications where people get their CEs, and, we try to make things match up. Everything has to be year to year. Now, the LPC, they might have different statutes, or they might have authorities that they were given to right size their renewals, but we don't have those. Okay, great question though, love it. So again, the fees, what we did is we have the same, whether you're certified or a regular art therapist, the fees are the same. The application is 150, and that's to go through your paperwork, that staff time to get everything straight. The license is only $50 and it's valid for a year, and the renewal is the same one. And again, it's good for the licensure year. The provisional, we made the same because we thought we looked at the applications and stuff and we said, this is really going to be about the same amount of staff time. And we just kind of right-sized it.
Let me go back, I'm sorry.
Of course,
Go
no,
back to
please.
Definitions number to 8, because I'm a little, I guess, confused. So provisional licensed art therapist means a person who is licensed by the office to practice art therapy. And then if you look at the law, this is where it's a little confusing. A provisional licensed art therapist. So a provisional licensed art therapist may apply to the office for a license under ORS 681. Once provisional licensed art therapist. It seems like we're using the same word license to mean different. I think, do we need clarification on the difference between a provisional license and a full license? Because there is a difference. Because the provisional license does require the supervision, and it's, I mean, if you read a provisional licensed art therapist may apply to the office for a license, you're like, wait a second, there's some disconnection there.
I think legally, the term license in this context is interchangeable. The effect is going to be to the facility supervision for 2 years prior to the LIT, and it's going to affect reimbursement. So I think just in terms of the operational definition of the term here, it's fine.
Okay, but keep your pens if you want to go back, because remember when I said we talk about definitions, we can get a little stuck. When we get down into the areas where these are used, that's where your point is going to come, and you might see kind of how it's used. And then if we have to go back and tweak something or add something, let's do it. Okay?
I just want to speak to that. I remember when we were writing the language for this, and I was confused about that, and it makes sense to continuously refer to it as provisional licensed art there. As long as it's provisional, right? It's kind of like the LP's intern. It's just, right, that's the name, that's the language.
Okay, and that's what
Working toward.
Number 6 in the bill gives us.
Right.
But along those lines, I'm wondering if we actually need to look at the definition of art therapist to somehow include something as provisional. Did not.
Okay, let's put a pin in that and let's see if we need it. Again, good thoughts. Okay, let's see if we need it once we get to where we're gonna go. If you notice, we're back in fees. We struck the affidavit of licensure mainly because that's for people coming in through reciprocity. We usually create if the legislature allows us to create a reciprocity path. In the many years since we've had this, nobody's come in that way. They're like, got my ATR, I'm good. You know, so they don't come in that way. So we're like, let's get rid of the stuff we don't need, right? So we're down to division 380, which is the licensure of art therapists. Okay, the bold again has been added. The strike through is a proposed cut. Okay, so we just have, not much has changed here. If you'll notice, we just say licensed art therapist. Again, DOJ advised to make that very clear. The other thing we're struggling with, and keep this in mind, is people can describe an art therapist. This is the problem when you have things like, you say, oh, go make me a Xerox copy. It could be a Ryko copier. Everyone says Xerox. Everyone says Band-Aid. Nobody says adhesive bandage, right? So we need to make sure it's very clear. If someone just describes themselves, hey, I'm an art therapist, that doesn't mean you're a licensed art therapist, right? So they thought that clarification was important to add. We also, it says, has received a master's, at least a master's degree from a program accepted by the ATCB on. And this is because we're changing the legislation. If you notice, we're dropping a line on when we start, we started some of these requirements. And so that was just, again, it's an attorney suggestion, again, saying, okay, arrange for official documentation certifying, from the certifying organization, proving that the applicant meets the June 20th, 2019 ATCB requirements when they apply.
When it says as an ATCB, curious what as an ATCB means in this sentence. Five.
Does that the
That's the name of the organization.
ATCB means the Art
Yeah,
Therapy
I'm looking
Credentials
at-
Board.
If you go down.
Yeah. Oh,
five,
ATCB requirements as an, oh, okay, I see what you mean.
ETRBC.
ATRBC.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. BC. Okay, on the date of application. And this is the licensed art therapist. This is not the licensed certified.
So it should be.
Then it just be ATR.
ATR.
Yes.
You guys are awesome. On the date of application. So this is just saying that as of that date, and the attorneys are really strict about adding some of these timelines when national certifications are changing the requirements to make sure that when our legislation moved, those timelines are also defined. So that we can say, okay, well, the law required this on this date. Well, I was certified back here. So maybe I don't have to meet these requirements, right? So it's like putting a goalpost in.
So what does this mean though for new programs that have come into effect or been approved by the ATCB after June 20th of 2019? Is that, so I'm trying to understand the necessity or why the June 20th, 2019 date came into play.
That was something that, because this existed before, we want to make sure that we are protecting it. Said, okay, accepted by the ATCB, have received at least a master's degree from a program accepted. I think I need to work on this. I think what they're trying to do is,
That would disqualify us. Or you, by June 20th of 2019.
Well, okay, hold on. I received at least a master's program accepted by the ATC.
I need to
Oh,
tell.
got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
the ATCB will accept their. This is an actual art thing.
Right.
So that's fine. I think
Yeah.
that's totally fine.
Okay, yeah, and it's, again, they're just dropping timelines to,
This is not KHAP. This is not the AK. This is saying that the ATCB is deciding which programs
Right, meet the
meet
requirements.
the ATR-BC.
But they've had to meet those requirements by June 20th of 2019.
So you're saying if a program
Yeah, but it's
comes up in
at-
2024,
Or,
there's a new grad program. That's a good point.
On or after
right.
that
Yeah,
date.
maybe can we say on or after?
yes, absolutely, we can.
Yeah.
And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, because we have the ATCB accepting master's degrees, right? So we want to make sure that when our bill went into effect, we were accept, whatever their credentials were. It's kind of like when we do practice standards. We have to say exactly which practice standards, the 2016 practice standards. That way, people know what rules they're abiding by. They can see what master's degrees that the ATCB was saying. So we kind of drop a timeline saying, okay, if you have any debate about this, we have to look at this time and look at what the ATCB was doing and go by that. Does that make sense?
If we could say yeah, on or after.
Yeah.
When new programs.
And then we have arranged for official documentation to be sent to the office directly from the certifying organization, proving that the applicant meets the requirements on or after, and I'll wordsmith that.
Sure.
After, yeah. Okay, and then we have, again, the ATCB requirements as an ATR at the date of application. Okay. And we have the fingerprint-based nationwide criminal background check. Okay, and that was something that we flowed on through to the provisional because it was important at the time. But we'll get to that. Pay all fees, okay, and then beginning, and this is what's really interesting about your bill, is you also have a change in 2 years to reflect this provisional requirement. So we have beginning January 1, 2028, applicants must submit proof of having 2 years of supervised mental health practice as a provisional licensed art therapist as described in this. And what we wanted to ask you guys for the licensing staff, what would that look like? Will they have a form from the ATCB or what would that proof look like?
Confused if that's relative to. Once again, we're going back to that argument of definition of licensed art therapist versus professional licensed art therapist, because number 8 isn't necessary for licensed art therapists, only for provisional.
So we've discussed that. So it is relevant to licensed art therapists. What we want to say is that somebody can't, get the ATR in 1 year and then get the LA. You need 2 years of supervised practice.
Per this law.
And so we've discussed this. We have, do you want to?
Sure, so either they can show that they have 2 years from the date that they applied for the PLAT. And that's their proof, or they have 2 years post getting their ATRP from the ATCB, which they have to register. Now, that's a requirement, is to get the ATRP from the ATCB. So they can show that the date when they applied for the ATRP, and then it's been 2 years from that date.
Applied and approved.
Applied.
Well, right. The other thing though is you could, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. You can get your provisional and not work. Who's to say you worked? And the statute requires completes 2 years of supervised mental health practice. So our question is, what would they be able to submit? You can't just, you get a license, who says you're working, right? You could just have it hanging on the wall because it's pretty.
So in order to get the ATR, they have to show the 1,000 hours.
Well, they don't say 1,000 hours. They just say completes 2 years of supervised mental health practice as defined by the Art Therapy Credentials Board or its successor organization that protects you
Right.
and approved by the office by rule. So we have to say what that looks.
So essentially, the ATCB requires 1,000 hours of supervised supervision. And we're saying that we would have them show that they've met those that 1,000 hours over the 2 years.
Yeah, so here's, let me try to simplify this. To get the LAT, they have to have ATR. To get the ATR, they have to have registered their supervisor and documented 1,000 hours of supervised practice. We're adding to that
Okay.
and saying, and it has to have taken place over 2 years. So this process of documenting the 2 years isn't above and beyond. It won't have to show the supervision. We already have that. We have the hours, we have the supervision covered by the ATR, the ATCB. We want additional, just pure chronology. We don't want people to do this in 1 year. And that's why these steps solve that problem.
Okay. And that sounds great. But my question is, when somebody applies going forward, because this is after 2028, in order to get the full meal deal, you're going to have to show you have this. Will they have a certificate from the ATCB? Will they have, because we have dozens of professions and some people have like a supervision log that they keep that's signed off on. What are they going to have in their hand?
If they go what we think is going to be the most common route of getting their PLAT, then you don't have to go to the ATCB. You'll see, okay, they registered the PLAT 2 years ago. They have their 1,000 hours. They have their supervision. You're good to go. So all you'll need is to see that they registered for the PLAT 2 years prior. That's the most common. Now,
Okay.
if they're coming from another state, they have their ATR. Then they need to they need the ATCB to show to you, they've had either their ATR for 2 years already, or they registered for the provisional registered art therapist 2 years ago.
Okay, so there's a couple of avenues
Yes.
that we have here. So let's describe our avenues.
Yeah.
Okay, so we say beginning January 1st, applicants must submit proof of having 2 years of supervised mental health practice. And let's think about how we want to capture this. May submit, this could be an or. Okay, A would be proof of the, what would it look, would it be the 1,000 hours, or what do they call it? If they have that 1,000 hours or 2 years as a X, Y with 1,000 hours, what does that look like?
Okay, so I think we have elsewhere, maybe not here.
Look at number 5 under licensed certified art therapist, or even number 5 in this one, right?
Uh-huh.
Where we have to provide official documentation sent to the HLO from
Okay.
a certified organization. So
Ah.
it's the same type of thing is that we are
It
looking at
is.
requiring.
Yes.
So that I think is what's, but I'm gonna bring this back up. This paragraph does not belong in this section. This paragraph that we're working on only belongs in paragraph 26,
What page?
bottom of page 3. Because this paragraph that we're talking about, 20 talks about the LAT, 25 talks about the LCAT, and then 26 talks about the LPAT. So we don't need it in the other 2 sections.
Okay, when I set this up, I was looking at section 4 and 5 of the bill. And it says a licensed art therapist to an applicant who, and then we have the completed 2 years of supervised mental health practice. And then the licensed certified art therapist has the same requirement as the completed 2 years of supervised mental health practice.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe let's get our options down, and then we can make sure it fits in the right.
Okay, so we have, so I can just bring this down, because if you're gonna have an A, we gotta have a B, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can arrange, applicants must, we can do must, so must arrange for official documentation to be sent to the office directly from the certified organization, proving that the applicant and so we'll say on the date of application, has, what would it be described as?
A supervisor. They have to submit a supervisor agreement form. This is
I
just.
just think the ATRC should be,
Yeah.
or the ATRP should be granted. But can we, I think the simplest route is they've registered for their PLA2 with Oregon Health Licensing Office 2 years prior.
That makes sense.
I think that's the absolute simplest option.
Okay, at must. We'll just say, and then we might be able to smooth this out somehow.
Yeah, we'll
Submit
smooth the-
proof. But what if they are coming from another state? And will that be the
It's
next?
gonna be the
Okay.
next one.
Proof of having a provisional, this is where the plat comes in, right?
Yeah,
Having a plat for 2 calendar years.
24 months.
Do that from the health licensing. Always do the disciplinary action.
Yeah.
If that's okay. Okay, or. And this could be if they're coming from another state.
Yeah, and this is going to be kind of copied from above.
Mhm.
Arrange for official documentation to be sent from the office directly from the certifying organization proving that the applicant has held the ATR for 24 months, or was granted the ATRP 24 months prior. So
And this would come from the other state, right? It wouldn't come from
this would
the,
come from the ATCB.
ATCB.
oh,
So I just think this is the simplest way to demonstrate 2 years time duration.
Because the PLAT renewal will require submission, proof of supervision or CEU.
We just want to show, because the ATR will show supervision.
Right.
The ATR will show hours. We just want to show time duration.
Right.
a plat. Or
This will be.
24 months?
Not flat, this will be ATRP.
Right, ATRP, which is their
ATRP?
language. ATR, not, yeah.
ATR,
Not
oh, sorry.
ATRP.
Yeah, these damn autocorrects, man.
Okay.
TRP for 24 months.
Uh-huh.
What if it's partial? Can they do like a year somewhere and say, I want to come to Oregon?
So
The ATCB doesn't only provide it for one, it's national.
Okay, so you could come in, but what if you had like half through the national and you want to finish here?
So, and that's totally fine. I think the key thing is, once they're applying to the LAT,
Hmm.
they need to show that they started the process 2 years prior. If they started the process 2 years prior and they've got their ATR, meaning they have their 1,000 hours, they have their supervisor, great. So if the other thing we want to add is, there are going to be some folks who didn't get the ATRP. So we also want to have an option for people to show that they've held the ATR for 2 years. At least, and that's something that ATCB can show.
So I understand where we're going with this, wanting the 2-year requirements, but the one thing that I remember from when we did this before, we talked about this earlier, is that we cannot require anyone to be an ATRP. And if we're,
I mean, it's a law. You have to have ATRPs if the national, they changed it.
No, I know what you're saying. You're saying locally. And if that's the case, if they want to do the extra work of showing that they have all the requirements and go through the HLO, that's fine, but they're going to do that through the plat.
right, and so what is the mechanism through the plat to document the 2-year supervision versus just having the plat for 2 years?
You can't just have it, because you could have it not work, right? You
Yeah,
could have
so-
it not get what you want.
In which case we would need a form. And this is something that has sort of been in the background. As some, it hasn't come up, but it's something that could. So I think it's a good point. We would need to have.
Kind of like the Form 6 for the LBC, right?
That's what they.
Yes, so I mean, I think that's an important conversation. We should have it. And whether we've had this editing process or not, it would still be an important conversation.
Right, and I just keep coming back to, because it all makes sense until somebody calls up and goes, hey, I was doing my supervision in Chicago and I've got to come to Oregon. Can I finish in Oregon? So,
And that's fine, as long as they have documentation that they started the process.
okay,
That's the key. Once they get the ATRP, it starts the process of accruing hours. And
So what if we changed A to say submit proof of having a PLT that documents 24 months of supervision?
Because for most people, the health licensing office won't have to do that. The ATCB, the ATR.
It's that one person so that's the problem, is that we're writing rules that cover everyone, and so we have to make sure we're covered.
I just don't want to add extra work to HLO.
hey, I mean, give us the scenario that you think will work.
Yeah, I just want it to be written in a way that accommodates that scenario while not requiring for everybody. It's like for the HLO to double the ATCB's work in terms of tracking supervision.
What else for a clause for like 4? is right what you're talking about here, and that it addresses specifically, like, if moving from another state, what would be accepted?
Well, I think, Cheryl, what you're talking about is for someone who doesn't want anything to do with the ATC, maybe for whatever reason, right? That we have a pathway for them.
And just the 2 years though is not, does not meet requirements because that, if we just say the 2 years. So if you look at 8 above it, it says must submit proof of having 2 years of supervised mental health practice, must. So do we just need to say submit? Do we need to define proof there, submit said proof of having supervised mental health for 2 years?
Yeah, I think that is a good option. Right, because I think the ATR does that. And if someone doesn't want to go through the ATR at all, we have an extra option. It's just going to be more dynamic with the HLO. They're going to submit and we will help codify what they need to submit. I know you were asking about that.
Yeah, because what is that gonna look like for our licensing staff? If someone says, okay, starting in 2028, I want this license, here's my stuff.
Yeah.
What is that stuff gonna look like?
So is it the same form that you have to submit when you, like your ATR, when you, yeah,
We will
like Form
replicate it.
6, yeah.
Yeah, I
Effectively,
think it's Form 6.
and make sure that the HLO,
Yeah, submit proof of,
It would be $1,000 for a K-HAP approved, accredited, and 1,500 for a non-K-HAP.
right,
and what's tricky is the HLO would then need to be able to dig into it and interpret it, and, so I think it's an option that is the most complex option, and I think.
So there would be a couple of different layers here. One, I think we would need to include in the rules and definitions as what a supervisor, if the definition of a supervisor is. And then we would also be creating a form that could be submitted to the health licensing office with that route that has that the list of these are the hours, and the start date of them, because we have to show that it's been 2 years, right? And tracking the number of supervision times and that both the applicant and the supervisor or supervisors are signing off on those hours.
When we get to the provisional, you're right on top of it. So when we get to the provisional, we talk about what's supervision.
Yeah,
Okay,
so we
that's
would bring
awesome.
that into the provisional. And I think if someone doesn't want to go through the HTCB, they have to go through the provisional, right? And that way they can register their supervisor with the HLO. They can like do some groundwork, right? And that way there'll be 2 points of contact, the initial and then the subsequent. So they would submit the initial form, be like, here's the supervisor. If they change their supervisor, they have to submit a form. And then when they actually apply for the LAT, they demonstrate 1,000 hours. And it's all signed off by the supervisor.
Yeah, and we have lots of programs that have supervised experience. So we have lots of forms that we can, some people have to do it live, constantly handwritten signatures. That's certainly something we can work on. I just want to make sure when we get to 2028, the other thing we have to keep in mind, and I don't want you to glaze over when I say this, is unconstitutional delegation of authority. And what that means is Oregon is extremely cognizant of putting its residents' hands into an exterior organization that says you must belong to this organization, or you, in order to do this work, you have to join them. Because what if they start charging $3,000 a year? What if, God forbid, they go out of business?
Yeah.
What do? You are stuck, and that has happened, right? That's why they say or successor organization. So let's just keep in mind any way that we can keep the authority here, whether it is we are asking for something, we have a form you can use, and we're not requiring anyone to go and spend money on an external organization that they may not have to.
so just came to me potentially a way we could simplify this, similar to when we apply for the LAT or no CAT. The application form could have attestation, kind of like you have to say that you have completed your continuing education and then you are subject to potential audit. So you have to attest that you meet the qualifications, including this. And then it puts the burden back on the person that if they don't, and if they're audited, then they are in violation.
I think I agree with all that. I think the one point in this law that we have, that we don't have a workaround, that would be pretty easy to do is the exam. So the ATCB exam is the key step. Now, and that is what it is. Recreating that is outside of our scope. So I think, yeah, I think we just need to build in that infrastructure. I think we've been needing to do it. Now's the right time to do it. Build in the infrastructure for if somebody wants to go through this documentation process with licensing office as opposed to ATCB companies.
Okay. We can keep this in, I see the thought bubble. We keep this in mind as we get down into the provisionals and see if there's something that we can flesh out there. That it's kind of, I know we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. We're saying, okay, 2 years in the future, imagine you have to have this thing. And we haven't even gotten the thing you need to get to the thing. So maybe you can flow a little bit. Yes? You have a thought bubble?
I was holding on to it.
Oh.
Hold on to it for later, so I don't.
One more thing missing
Yes,
here,
please.
which is, this is good. I've had new ATRP. We also want an option for just the ATR. The ATR is what gets you the LAT. There are some folks who did not have the ATRP as an option in other states, but maybe they'll have their ATR for the last 5 years. We just want to demonstrate that they have had the ATR for 24 months. So
Huh.
this is just, so we have documentation that individual had an ATRP.
Mhm.
Or another option, arrange for official documentation from the ATCB that individuals had an ATR for
Okay.
24 months.
But let me
Pose a question.
yeah.
This is gonna go into effect in 2028.
Right now, what we're talking about are the requirements to get the full meal deal 2 years from now.
2 years from now.
Yeah, because this is taking into account, and notice we have the date on there, beginning January 1, 2028. In order to get the license, you have to show 2 years of supervised mental health practice. So what we were asking is, okay, on January 1 or January 2nd, whenever we come into the office after that holiday, what are people going to have to show described as 2 years of mental health, supervised mental health practice when they apply? Like, what are they gonna have to prove that?
So the reason I bring that up is as of July 1st, 2024, that's where the ATRP is required.
Mhm.
Does that impact us at all?
No, I think our timelines are our own. I just was wondering about this third option that you were talking about.
Of having the ATR for at least 2 years.
Yeah, the third option is, it's an option for people who have the ATR, but they want to get the LAT. They never had the ATRP because they got their ATR prior to
That makes sense.
getting the ATRP. And so this is just it's a very rare situation.
No, trust me, we live in the world of rare situations, okay? We have everything.
What we don't want is for people to go get the ATR in another state in like 18 months or whatever, and then come back to Oregon. And so this is just kind of dotting our i's here. So
No, and I appreciate you thinking of that because usually our RACs and our board members are the A+ players, okay? You have to remember, and I forgot to say this in my training, rules are the floor, not the ceiling. You can always do better than this. You can't do worse. So that's what we need to remember is, and rules are for people who also don't follow the rules. So we need to think about like baseline, someone's gone somewhere, done something, is now coming over here. How does that fit into this?
and I would also add, if they have their LAT or their LCAT, they don't need to do any of this. right?
Right.
Is it-
I was also gonna say, we probably need a clause in here, or equivalent for whatever state they're coming from, because there might be different terminology for a plat in a different state.
Yeah,
or-
usually they would have to meet,
State.
we have substantially equivalent language. Oh, yes, well, there are some things where it says practice of art therapy, be in good standing in any other states where the applicant is licensed or certified. We change it to authorized because that's the generic term for all of them. To practice art therapy and pay a licensure fee. Be in good standing in any other state. So you don't have the substantially equivalent language, but usually it's if they're coming from another place, they have to show that the state's requirements, it's not, in some of our professions, HLO requires at least a master's degree in public or community health, and you look at other states and it's 2 liters of Pepidine, and I have to say, half a tank of gasoline, you know, it has to be substantially equivalent usually. So this third one,
So
arrangement,
the plat is specifically or.
Right, but okay, so let's finish this C,
Introduction.
From the ATCB, that the individual had ATR.
KTR for 20 minutes. So send is above minus the P.
ATCR,
No,
Just
ATR.
ATR.
Or ATRB.
Or equivalent from.
Or ATRBC.
Yeah, ATR or ATRBC.
BC.
Yeah.
Or at least
24 months.
Yeah,
And that,
months prior to date of application.
yeah.
that's for the lab level, right? So we're saying that the 24 months has to be met in order to have
Yeah, and
a lab here.
one thing I'm thinking about is just like a potential 1 month overlap scenario where we wouldn't want people who get the plat to have to renew it twice. And then 1 month later apply for the LCAT, right? So I think that would just be,
In terms of the fiscal impact.
Yeah.
What you're talking about.
so I'm saying they get the plat and then 12 months later, they reapply. And then 12 months later, they apply for the LCAT if they have all.
If they have the ATRBC.
And I think that would probably work, right? I just want to make sure the math works out here.
Can you say it again?
I just want to make sure that someone doesn't, if they're working and it's required that they have the plan.
Mhm.
And let's say they renew after 1 year. They get their ATR. I guess.
The question I have here is because Oregon does have the QMH P through MAC. And at just the initial level, you can do that. The art therapy is currently listed in there. If it stays listed, then that could be the catch-all for the fund overlap. Or are we trying to just write it
Yeah,
in here?
that's a good point. No, you're right, you're right. I think this is all fine.
Okay, so these are our 3 starting in 2028. Now, remember, we're not the Panama Canal. We go a little further, we can come back and adjust.
Right, and we don't want this to be for renewal.
Oh, no. That's gonna be in a different place.
Okay.
We have to be able to literally, if we quote something, we have to say what it is, how you do it. Here's the initial licensing, then we get into renewal, and then we get into, that kind of thing. So this is great, and I appreciate it. And again, we can come back and tweet. Yes.
Unrelated question. Do you have coffee?
I do. Josh,
You're back here.
Keurig. You guys want to go trotting back there at Keurig?
So. Going to see.
Yeah, the arrange for official documentation,
We
yep.
need to say BC because for the next one, we're going to be talking for the cat. So that would really qualify for.
This is if someone else comes in, like I moved here from a different state.
Oh,
My
if you're coming as
ATRBC already.
would you come in as an ATR? Would you come as an ATR?
Well, this is the requirements for initial licensure as a lab.
ATR.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be the next, actually.
Can you go back up?
I would apply.
Yes.
No, sorry, back there.
Okay. Try not to stare too hard because you'll get motion sick.
We'll look at 3 options.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. We could probably combine B and C because this is ATRP and this is ATR and ATRBC. So we could just do ATRP, ATR, or ATRBC.
Okay, so B can be ATRP
ATR or
ATR or ATR.
So we don't need the BC part, because the BC falls into the next section.
Because
We're gonna remove C.
if I have my ATRBC, I'm applying for my
but you still.
LCAT. I'm not applying for my lab, I'm applying for my LCAT.
Yeah, the next one is the licensed certified art therapist section.
You're right.
So we don't
Take
need
out the
ATR.
That's okay. So this one would be ATRP or ATR
Yeah.
for 24 months prior. We don't need a comma there. Date of application, and that just smashes the right out.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
I love it. You're doing awesome. Let me know if anybody needs to run to the restroom or anything, but.
I would not be upset with that.
Okay, so tiny break. Or Mary, do you want to keep working or do you want to run to the ladies?
I'm good, I'm just gonna.
Sherilyn,
I'm good.
you're good?
I'm very strong.
Hallway, if you want to join us, and we're not going to move miles without you, so feel free to come.
So we'll copy that over, but add ATRBC.
Right,
Okay, so let's keep this.
or just
Okay, and now we're headed into licensed certified art therapist territory. And this, I haven't forgotten, this is on or after.
if you already have a BC, you're required, the only difference would be, the fees are the same, the only difference is the number of CEs, but you are required for the BC for your 5
Plus,
years.
you have.
Right. So now this next part though is, I was gonna say, do we need the PLIT in there? But yes, because there are cases where someone might do the PLIT and then do the exam right away and go right from PLIT to the C.
The LCAT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like my old life. I used to work in intellectual property law, so reading statutes and rules and laws kind of like second.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I love these recs because I get to learn, what's great is, I mean, I've got obviously staff online too, is when we start getting these applications, we don't know what we don't know. And all of a sudden, people are like, and you can't even imagine, you know, I have this, I have that, is that good enough? What does this look like? Here's a piece of paper, here's a gum wrapper, what, you know, does this work?
Well, we'll get to talk about one of those when we get further in.
Exactly. So I've essentially aligned the licensed certified art therapist. Obviously, we added the word licensed, master's degree from a program accepted on or after. The applicant meets the June 20th, 19 ATCB requirements on or after the date of application. That you are certified by the ATCB as an ATRBC. You guys are really pushing the acronyms here. Or possess the qualifications, and this is, I believe we have this up above as well. No,
We need to make sure we.
possess the qualifications to be credentialed.
Yes.
I don't know why we struck that out. That is not cool. Because the idea is, again, we talked about unconstitutional delegation. You don't have to go to the, and we've had people do this with our licensed dietitians. If you're good with the CDR, come and waive your CDR, we're gonna set you up. But we can't require you to do that. So if you took their exam and you have everything you need in order to be, you're good enough, right? So that's part of that unconstitutional thing. So we're all up to speed. We brought this
Need to take 5A out then.
5A. Okay.
Wait,
Because
No,
no,
Well,
it says or, it's an or, one or the other.
proving that the applicant meets the requirements
Okay.
to be certified or possess everything you need to be certified. Yes.
Above, we said needs to be on or after June 20th, 2019 requirements. Do we want to extend that here?
Yeah, okay, on or after.
So, and it's, we want to say,
Basic qualifications as of June 20th, 2019, or meets qualification as of or after, some, however we said before.
instead of at, maybe as of or after.
Okay, ATCB.
As of,
Yeah, as of
qualifications as of.
or after.
These qualifications as of. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's right, or after.
Yeah, as of or after.
quick. And as it meets the qualifications as of ATCB requirements, so we got to go around again. Meets the, how about this? And I mean, I'm spitballing here.
Effective,
So when they,
I get the as of or after, effective,
Wouldn't it, what would an A be and be a, like, they're under 5, right? So the date would already be applicable.
yeah, we're just dropping that they are proving that they meet the ATCB requirements as an ATRBC. I think I think we need to keep this. Meets the. Okay, qualifications. Of, this is a
The problem is
awful
we have three
construction.
time cues. We
Yeah,
have
yeah,
the time of the qualifications or the requirements, and we also have the time of the application.
no, you're right. That's what's making this thing beastly. Okay, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to have official documentation sent from the organization proving that the applicant meets the ATCB requirements as an ATRBC.
when the law went into effect, or after.
So I think we need to put the date prior to ATCB, the as of June 2019 or after ATCB requirements. As of or after.
Qualifications.
And then, yeah, bring that back to,
Where am I putting it? Meets the, we could say, June 20th, 2019, ACTB requirements as an ATRBC.
What about meets the ATCB requirements effective June 20, 2019 or later?
yeah, good.
Yeah, okay. See, we're in the weeds now. Meets the ATCB requirements as an ATRBC
Effective.
on or after.
Yeah.
Prior to the date of application.
Right.
Does that get us there?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I know, this is where the sweat starts to roll, right? Okay, so they have to submit or, okay. Applicants must. Okay, be certified. Here are your options. Be certified as an ATRBC or possess the qualifications to be, but you haven't done it. And you have to, and the other, these are your two options, and you have to pass a fingerprint check.
I'm gonna play just,
Please.
what does it mean to submit official documentation that possesses the qualification if it's not coming from the ATCB?
And for that, we have to establish the forms.
Right.
Right, it's, in this, it's the law, it says you have to do it, and then there's the next step of internally from the
How?
HLO,
How
how
do we
the
do it,
forms to
yeah.
do that. And so I think that could go on the program website potentially. Because this sets the requirement and then it can be explained on the website if that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, usually what we would require, and I'm not saying in your scenario specifically, but if in order to be certified with the ATCB, you have to pass an exam, you need to have certain education, master's degree accepted by, and you have to, I don't know, juggle flaming axes. You could do all that, get your certificate from the organization, they send it and they go, they're good, and then we say you're good. Or you can submit to us that you passed the exam separately, that you have the right education, and you can juggle flaming axes.
So like transcripts, copy of
Yeah.
your exams.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is the catch-all category. Again, that's the unconstitutional delegation. We don't want to put everyone's fates in the hands of an organization that could suddenly charge too much money or go out of business. So we want to be able to have the caveat and say, okay, even if the ATR, or ATRBC, whatever, went out of business, the Art Therapy Board credentialing board went out of business. If we list everything you needed to have, you can still get your license. It's sort of a belt and suspenders kind of thing. And we have had that happen where the statute required, this is terrifying to think about, the statute required an exam from a specific organization in order to be licensed. That organization went bust. Now what do? You are stuck. And so we're trying to, build that in, little flexibility in. So, you have to be certified or possess everything you need, and you need to pass a fingerprint-based national background check. Pay all fees. Here's that second chunk of the as of 2028, and I brought it down. Now I think our acronyms are gonna have to change, yes?
You need to add for ATRBC here.
Has an ATRP, comma,
ATR
or ATR, or
or ATRBC.
for 24
For
months.
the LCAT now. So if someone
Yeah.
comes from another state
This is,
and they want their LCAT, they've had BC.
I'm questioning the ATRP listing.
can you go from
You can go from ATRP to
to
LCAT.
The difference is the exam.
Right, but depending on when you have the exam, you might have to.
Go to the LAT as an step. Or if you fail the exam.
Right.
And that doesn't go in your, so yeah, this works because you can go from
You have 3 ways.
to LCAT if you get everything done in those 2 years.
Okay, so in theory, you could have any one of these 3 certifications and go straight to the licensed certified.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Guys are rocking it. Okay, so if that's, now we're down into newborn territory. And this is the brand new stuff for the provisional licensed art therapist. We're including this. Your previous bill said everything had to be on a website available to the public. They didn't say it on this. But we thought, let's roll it down because it will be. It's going to be out there on Elite. You have to meet the requirements. That is a simple, the requirements of 331 Division 30 are things like what are acceptable identifications? What, how does the whole application paperwork thing work? Okay? Submit a completed application form prescribed by us. That means we're going to make it for you. Must contain the information listed in. Again, this is the whole 2 forms of identification. One of them is photographic, all that. And according to your bill, you have to show that you're at least 18 years old. That's pretty simple. Have received at least a master's degree from a program accepted by the ATCB on May 28th,
Why
2025.
do we have the 2 different dates? Why do we have the June 19th date and then May 28th?
The June 19th date is drawing a line in the sand for master's degrees from the previous legislation. Okay, because remember that was then. This is saying essentially when the effective date, we have 2 effective dates.
Yeah.
One is when this was signed by the governor, and that's May 28th, 25. and the license, which has to be available on Jan 1, 2026.
So does this need to say on or after May 2025?
Yeah, we can do it.
Because we're talking about
Yes.
28. and this-
That's absolutely fine. Again, you guys are gold stars and I love it.
Four brains.
But I mean, again, I look at this so much, I get deaf to it. I really do. That's another reason why you're here. So we have the official documentation directly from that the applicant meets the requirements. I'm learning from you guys. ATCB requires as a provisional registered art therapist on or after
Effective or whatever.
by the date of application.
Shouldn't it be registered? Should it be provisional at this step? Or should it be registered?
It says provisional, these are called provisional registered art therapists. Oh, provisional licensed.
Yeah.
You see, provisional
So this is for the LCMT.
licensed art therapist.
Oh, this is for the
This is the new baby, provisional licensed art therapist.
It should be provisional registered. It was, but this is for the
Oh,
class.
Oh, well, except if they're
The provisional
applying for.
Registered is from ATCB.
Yeah, this says provisional licensed art therapist.
Yeah,
That's,
our limit law.
But if they are applying for the PLET, they're not. So the official documentation is going to be different because the official documentation is going to be their transcripts, right, that's because you don't have certified. Yeah, you're gonna be looking at recent graduates. So they're not going to have, what official documentation will they have?
Here's my question. So this is for
PLET.
the plat
the plat.
here.
So it should be, they meet the requirement for the provisional
Registered.
registered instead of licensed. Because the plat is us, the prat, the ATRB is them.
And this is the ATCB's requirements in there.
And this is the ATCB's requirement, so it should be as a provisional registered art therapist. Requirements of that
Okay.
are what establish the plat for us.
Right.
But then we'll need to put in the, or, and then we have to add that
Or-
clause, or meets the
Or meets
the
the,
qualifications, or whatever, yeah.
and we'll just copy it from above. or-
Okay, well, now I was just starting to get nervous because the provisional registered is not mentioned anywhere in this bill.
It's-
And that's,
It's a definition that we made at the beginning, right?
well, careful, I'm rolling. We have ATRP.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking
Provisional
about.
registered.
Oh, okay, okay. Had a little panic attack, I'm better, good now. Okay, it was small.
There's a lot of acronyms being thrown.
I know.
I used to work for the state police and I thought we had the lock on acronyms. I'm gonna have whole conversations with acronyms. I think you guys win.
Well, so imagine this, it's the ATCB, the Art Therapy Credentialing Board, yeah, Credentials Board, and then there's the ATBC.
We have this,
Art Therapists.
we have the same thing with the Behavior Analysis Certification Board and the Behavior Analysis Board certified. Yeah, they go back and forth. And I've had that board for 10 years and I still flub it. So
So, yeah,
I'm
we're-
human.
We're reverting word back to what it originally.
So, number 5.
Yes.
Change the word license to registered.
Yeah,
As a provisional,
registered.
oh, should we use the acronym?
Yeah, just use the acronym ATRP, because that's what we've defined.
ATRP.
But
Right.
then we have to add the clause in there to take us out of the requirement of the ATRP or provide documentation supporting, however we say that.
So let's copy that from above, I think.
Which one are we going to?
We want to say possess the qualifications to be credentialed as.
I don't
So it's like a
know.
number B.
Here's the, or its successor. Oh, yeah, I don't know if we can do that.
Qualifications to be.
Let me see. Because you might have provisions in your other. satisfying the requirements to be credentialed as a registered art therapist. I'm not sure. Yeah, you got different language. This is where things get in the weeds. If you look at, let's say section 5 in the bill. And it says 18 years of age has received at least a master's degree from a program accepted by or its successor organization. 2 years of supervised, and then as satisfying the requirements.
So this for section, I think the bill is referring to licensed certified art therapists. Where's the section on the flat? That's section
The
seven.
It's 6.
Section 4? No.
No,
Section
6.
So section 6 is what we're looking at here.
Well, yeah, section, and maybe I'm losing it here, but section 4, if you look at little b, it's bold now. It says, as approved by the office by rule, satisfying the requirements to be credentialed as a registered art therapist by. So that gives you the out. If you look at section 5, it says, satisfying the requirements as a board certified therapist by the Art Therapy Credentials Board. So you satisfy the requirements to be credentialed, satisfy the requirements. Yeah, see, if you look at the top, number 4, and this is where we get into trouble. Number 4 says satisfying the requirements to be credentialed. That means that has you have everything you need, but you haven't been. 5 says, yeah, requirements as a board certified art therapist. So 4 and 5 are different. 4 gives you an out. 5, I don't think does.
Yeah.
So just as context for reading this, the intent of the law is for somebody to get the plat. They get the ATRP. They show that they are registering their supervisor ATRP.
Mhm.
And that's sort of our way to get the plat. But since we can't fully rely on the ATCB to do that, we just also need a more niche option. So I think we say, like the main option is if they get the ATRP, they establish their supervisor, they start accruing hours, then they can also get the plat. And for the delegation reasons, we just need something else to say or whatever the language is to make it so they don't have to just do that through the agency. If there's some other process of doing that, of establishing the supervisor or establish a way to establish the plat that doesn't include the ATCB. I think that's the only thing. Because the main way you get to the plat is that you get your ATCB. But is there another way, just like we have for the LAT and the ATR, we would have to build a little infrastructure. Like we have to do that for the LAT anyway. But it would cause more work for the HLO. So we definitely want to encourage people to do it to get the ATRP. But we also need, just like with LAT, some kind of option.
Right. We're trying to capture, as long as we stay within what we're allowed to do. And you notice how slight term of word, slight turn of phrase can change things. Capture within our bill all the ways that people starting in January 2028 will get the LCAT, the licensed certified art therapist. So does this get us there, or do we need another way?
I mean, I think this, let's see, so the proof of 2 years, this gets it there. You have, it's like the two things you need the hours and supervisor. ATCB covers that. If they don't, in those niche cases, we'll have an infrastructure.
We need to make a form.
We need a form to do that. But we need to show that it's 2 years either way. And this covers that. Because the plat will cover it. Once they get to now for the plat. The easiest way, just like with the other one, the easiest way is if they are going to all the work to get the ATRP. They are establishing a supervisor. They're making a plan. Then that's gonna be the easiest. It's gonna be just mirroring the same thing we've done with ATR to LAT. You say you get your ATRP, and that will, you can pay some money, more steps, you can get the plat as well. And that'll just make things easier for employers to say, okay, yes, this person has the national, but they also have,
Right.
they've been fingerprinted locally. So that's
Right, yeah,
perfect.
perfect.
And we also so let's start with that language. Just make sure we have that, and then we'll add the niche if someone doesn't want anything to do with the niche.
That's fine, arrange for, to be sent to.
Okay, so we have. Yep, that's good. And then we just need like a 5A.
That says or possesses qualifications to be credentialed as ATRP.
As an ATR, I'm sure we got that.
And it maybe, so maybe it's just even a comma or possesses.
Well, let's see if they gave us that. Submission proof as determined by the office, and that's where we were like, okay, what is this gonna look like? That you've been approved by the office by rule, satisfying the requirements as a provisional registered art therapist by the Art Therapy Credentials Board or its successor organization. And then the engagement in the supervisory relationship, we'll get to being in good standing in any other state. Pays a licensure fee.
So, because this is just relying on the AT. So I think we're fine to do that, but I know that we need some possibility.
If they allow us the possibility, that's the language. But I mean, we can always put it in there and we can ask our attorneys if we have the authority, because you saw how the different requirements were outlined. One of them, and again, we can't assume that we can do something. We can only do what they let us do. And you saw the difference, Cheryl, between 4 and 5. One says that we have to satisfy the requirements as a board certified art therapist. And one says satisfying the requirements to be credentialed. And that means you are one or you could be one. And that's the difference. And so I'm trying to see, did they give us that difference in the provisional? We can try and, I can always throw it to our attorneys and see what they think. But
For me, it's just to have it mirror the LAT.
oh no, and you want it to.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't let us. So we can try. You can try. So this is the provisional, right?
Yeah.
So what are we dragging down?
We're just going to add at the end of 5, possesses the qualifications.
proving that the applicant meets the ATCB requirements as an ATRP.
Or possessive qualifications to be credentialed.
Satisfying, see, this is the problem. Satisfying the requirements as a provisional registered art therapist by the Art Therapy Credential Board. It says you have to be. Doesn't say or possessing.
And that's fine with me. I mean,
Yeah. I know it's,
I think someone not doing that would be very rare.
And I agree. The question is, can we get away with it legally? Because we are requiring them.
And that's
to
okay.
register with an outside agency.
well, no, and you know what? If that's what the legislature gives us, it's very often when we do our analysis that we'll say, hey, we have concerns. But the legislature, okay, what do they say? If you have 5 attorneys, you're gonna have 6 opinions, right? The legislature has their attorneys, ledge counsel, that says this is fine. We have the DOJ, and they go, and they don't always agree, right? So this is, we can certainly try. We can certainly try. And again, I'll say you guys were, you had an opinion about this. I'm not sure this gets us there, But this is why we pay them the big bucks, right? So, meets the,
Too, it's just the spirit of the intent of the legislation is
Right.
something that I think does count here, and the intent is to create the provisional for its utility. That's what the legislators are interested in. They
Uh-huh.
want to have the provisional because it supports,
oh, no, I understand.
but I think this detail of how they get the provisional and us just to say, we're opening up that extra little possibility of going through the HLO. Right, but we would have to build out what forms are required to.
We'll try. We'll see if we can. Like I said, we're creatures of statute and we can only do what they specifically allow us to do. And just because it makes sense,
Okay.
and it absolutely, I'm not 100% sure. I just want to promise anything that gets shot down.
So if I'm following, what you're saying is this will be brought to DOJ lawyers and then I don't know, the government lawyers and then kind of work.
No, it's really,
Is this bill in some way or?
well, the way it works generally is I can't, I'm not an attorney, right? I'm not at the DOJ and I can't say, okay, I think we have, because they're not about yes and no, they're about risk. They're about minimizing risk. If this was challenged, can we defend it, right? That's what they say. And so they get down into these words and they say, okay, well, and they always assume, well, if the legislature wanted it to be A, they would have said A, right? So what they would do is we can look and I say, hey, listen, I think this says we could do or has everything they need to be certified by, and this doesn't appear to have that. Is that a limb we can climb out on?
Yeah.
Right? And what I can do is I can just put in here and I can highlight it and say, hey, this made sense to the RAC. This is feedback. This is great information. What do you think?
Yeah.
And sometimes they will outline to leadership higher than my pay grade. This is an acceptable risk. I have concerns about X. Because again, they don't live in black and white. That's why the gray is, that's why they live in the gray, right? So I can certainly put this in italics or whatever and say you wanted this and they can see if we can do it, so.
Well, and if you look at section 2 of the bill, 2A, capital A, it says it's approved by the office by rules satisfying the requirements of provisional registered art therapist by the ATCB. So it spells it out right in the law that you have to meet those requirements from the ATCB. So someone not going that path.
Yeah. And if you look at the difference, and I mean, I know we're in the weeds, but this is where we are. If you look in, the difference is, if you see in section 4 of the bill, and I am looking at what was little a that is now in 3 little b. As approved by the office by rules, satisfying the requirements to be credentialed. And the difference is you don't have to do it. You have everything you need to be credentialed. And the other one says
Well, and
the requirements as.
we could just keep it as written right here. I mean,
Do you,
if that's more in line with the way the bill's written. I mean, I don't think someone's going to challenge. Like, maybe if the ATCB were to fold and disband.
that's okay, because we have successor organization. So we are, it says or successor organization. So if the ATCB collapses tomorrow and is replaced by Art Therapy Ultimate, we can just say, okay, that's our successor organization. We can move forward. No one's going to get stuck in that. And I don't want to scare you and stifle your creativity with some of this legal talk. I'm just trying to
No, it's
keep the
helpful.
guardrails up a little bit.
It's helpful. Let's just keep it as it is. And where does it say or successor organization? It doesn't.
That's that's in statutory language. And so if anything ever happened, if you notice, in section 2, it says, as approved by the office by rule, satisfying the requirements, blah, 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 at the Art Therapy Credentials Board or its successor organization. So that is your
So
suspenders.
let's keep it. That's
Okay.
fine. then.
Okay. So we have at least a master's degree from a program accepted by the ATCB on or after May 28th, 2025. That's when this went into effect. You have to arrange for official documentation to be sent to the office directly by the certifying organization, proving that the applicant meets the ATCB requirements as an ATRP on or after May 28th, 25, by the date of application. Pass a fingerprint check, pay your fees. Now we get into some more weeds. Have a supervisory relationship with and they mentioned qualified supervisor. What does that mean? And submit documentation of the supervisory relationship on an HLO form. Yes.
We have some thoughts about what the qualified supervisor, so you have something you want to say?
Oh, no, I saw the hand.
No, I'm thinking.
Okay.
We've
Okay.
discussed that.
So it says on here, a qualified supervisor. So my suggestion was I looked up the art therapy credentialed supervisor from the ATCB. And I thought,
That's one option.
okay,
We were thinking, someone who is held the licensed art therapist for at least 3 years.
okay. With a qualified supervisor, with a let's see.
So either the LAT or the LCAT that they've held for at least 3 years.
Well, we said LAT, either the LAT for 3 years or the LCAT. Now,
So we could do that by defining qualified supervisor in the definitions.
Super must be, it's. And we can do little a.
Or we can move right into definitions to simplify it.
We absolutely could, but let's capture, before we start moving around and getting motion sick. Let's capture what it is, because sometimes, and what we do also is we try to think about how people use these rules. Because if you've ever tried to read this stuff and your head starts to hurt, it's because they don't care that much if you understand it, right? But we care desperately. We want you to be able to do the right thing. So like CE requirements, putting them in the HLO rules, and then you're over here having to send 2 sets and what? We try to say, okay, when somebody is looking for that, does it make sense for them to slide all the way up to the top? Or does it make sense to have it right there? So let's just see what it is, and then let's see what it feels like.
for simplicity, we've already done 24 months above.
Mhm.
We can just copy our language from above where we're talking about 24 months. And
This?
it would be the yes, A,
Okay, we'll just copy the structure. Bring it on down.
and then we're gonna say for having a LAT from the office, so
Okay.
submit proof of having a LAT instead of PLAT.
Oh, okay, wait, let's say a supervised relationship with a supervisor. How about relationship? It has to be supervisor. Ugh. With a supervisor and submit documentation of the supervisory relationship on an HLO form. Supervisor must be.
It's like to be qualified, a supervisor must.
Demonstrate or possess or.
Or even keep it as submit, but having a LAT instead of PLAT for 36 months instead of 24.
Oh, submit proof of having an LAT?
Yes,
36.
36 months.
An LAT from the office, or does that be from the office, or could it be anywhere from another state?
From the office.
Because we're also gonna do LCAT.
Oh, okay,
With no
okay,
time.
okay.
So,
An LAT from the office for 36 months,
yes,
with no outstanding disciplinary action, or
submit proof of having LCAT from the office with no
having an LACT,
LCAT.
LCAT.
from
With no outstanding disciplinary action.
36 months as well?
No, 36.
That was 36.
How many?
Zero. Like, if they have it, then they have had enough experience and they don't need it.
It's like a board certification.
Except, devil's advocate here, people who've done a PLAT, done the exam, they instantly will then be qualified for being a supervisor.
This is, and that's possible.
They still need to show 2 years.
They would have had 2 years,
2 years.
but we're trying to capture, there are gonna be some people are well qualified, but maybe came from another state, and they have their LCAT for 1 year or whatever it is, we just want to open that up as possible.
So I had my license in a different state for 5 years and my LCAT for that same, or whatever, my ATRBC for that same period.
And it's
Moved here, I had to wait 3 years before I could supervise, and so we're trying to say, I had my LCAT here, because I just applied for it, got it, I can start supervising.
right. But I see your concern.
Yeah, I mean, that, because that's what we were talking about before. If they do the PLAT, they do the exam the next month, 2 years after being.
I mean,
Should we say?
there could be a clause in there that has something to address that.
You do. I mean,
I mean, do we want to
There is
require
the
if that's the
ATC, yeah.
case, then there's some sort of supervision coursework or thing shown?
ATCS. It could also be or at the ATCS.
I
can't
just wouldn't want
require the-
people,
Can't require the CS.
No, I say as an option, so
Yeah.
or
Or have it,
LCAT.
We
or, yeah.
LCAT for 12 months, maybe.
But there are some people who have been, will be in ATR or an LAT for years and then finally do, so they've got multiple years of experience. So they were,
I say we just keep it LCAT or, I mean, because
because
if
of like,
someone's gonna evaluate a supervisor based on their experience.
Yes.
So someone's like, you know, but I think, again, this is the floor, not the ceiling. Makes sense. They've done the BC thing.
and someone who's going to be a supervisor is putting their license on the line anyway.
Yes,
So they
exactly.
think it's-
I think that's mission.
So what is, I guess, here's the other, variable that I'm seeing. Someone moves here, but they've had a supervisor who's in a different state. They are still they have had some of their supervision from someone who has ATCB's designations, right, and not Oregon's designations, and they maintain that same supervisory relationship to finish out their.
Can they do that? Can they be working here and getting supervision from somewhere else?
And under our therapy rules right now,
But that would not,
Can we say, or the equivalence, or its equivalence, but what does that mean?
if we're saying we want someone to be able to come here who's maybe worked a year somewhere else and have that time still count.
can they document, is there a way? And what we want to do is say, okay, if they started somewhere else, they wanted to come here. They would, if they wanted to practice here, they would have to get the plat. And then get a supervisor and finish their supervision.
But would they have to finish your supervision with someone who has an Oregon license? Because we're not necessarily requiring that if we're basing it off.
It just says qualified. You guys can put anything you want.
That makes sense. So like, I just, whatever, let's say, person A comes from Georgia and has a supervisor in Georgia that they've started with, they move here, there's no art therapist in their current practice, but the relationship with the supervisor in Georgia, you know, and they're willing to maintain that supervisory space, that maintains their provisional registered art therapy supervision without that person having to do additional paperwork for the ATCB. But then we're saying they have to change it for Oregon and have a new supervisor here.
Yeah, because if you follow the same, if we're looking for consistency, if you look at LPC, your supervisor, your clients need to be in the state where you are licensed. So if you're applying the same over to supervising, as your supervisee, you should be in the state where you are.
I think it may make things best to have supervisors outside the state. Like maybe,
I think it's in-state or it's someone that is credentialed with the ATCB.
I think if we're gonna add that caveat, they need to have the ATCS.
Yeah, or, yeah, and then maybe, so maybe the C would be or and ATCS.
Supervisors.
Yeah,
That's the credential agency.
yeah.
Or have what?
A supervisor, or I guess we already have a supervisor must have the credential ATCS from the AT.
Have the ATCS, is that noted?
Yes.
We may have
to
Well, I
define
can define it
We're gonna have to define it.
from the ATCB.
Wow, y'all are killing me. Okay. Now, is it all one, it's not ATC-S, right? It's just ATCS? Okay, before, don't look, because we're gonna, want you to throw up. Okay, here we go. We're going zooming back to definitions. ATCS.
Yeah.
So I think this needs to go here. My alphabet holds. And again, I can, ATCS means,
There'd be credentialed supervisor.
is it singular or plural?
It is
Credential,
credentialed, that's it.
uh,
ED, credentialed ED,
At the end of the.
oh, credentialed.
yeah,
Supervisor.
yes.
That's the one that I saw online.
By the ATCB.
And see, though, that's, you never know. These definitions do come in handy.
For continuity, we would want to make 3 match 4, so filling out like therapy credentials.
Yeah, incorporated. We need
Yeah.
to. I'll make a note to myself. Okay. Okay, so we're doing great. So we're gonna slide back down here. Thank you. But see, I love the fact you get that, right? Like you get it. So you have 3 options. You can be supervised by an LAT from the office for 36 months with no discipline, or an LCAT from the office with no discipline, or have the ATCS from the ATCB.
I think we need to modify with no outstanding disciplinary action to align with the rules.
Well, I kind of went back and forth mentally about that because no disciplinary action means anything. We have standard boilerplate language here, which says something like no current disciplinary action, right? But then the question is, what have you done before? So do we want to say just no disciplinary action, which means anything going on now, anything that did go on? Or do you want to just say anything current means the case is still being heard, right? So how do we feel about that?
I think
Past
to
or current?
align with the other, with the LPC, to align with somewhere in here it said that. I think we need to say no outstanding, because otherwise we are putting a,
Yeah. I agree.
A roadblock to never be able to do.
Yeah,
Otherwise
it's like
it's
a
a
really
everything.
minor thing, and then they just could never supervise.
Yeah, but I mean, this matters,
Yeah.
right? And if you,
I think there would be discrimination that we can live here.
Good catch. Good catch.
well, and we have fitness determinations. We make fitness
Right.
determinations, right?
And I think that's,
But, okay, does the disciplinary thing enter the picture? And we'll see. I mean, do they do discipline? Do they have their own investigators and things?
Yeah,
They absolutely do.
Do we want to say well, okay, here's the other thing we can do. We could back it up and we could say in good standing, which is what we said up top.
yeah.
Okay. So we could say having from the office, in good standing.
yeah,
And that way we're covered from the office
Let's take out.
yeah.
or see, in good standing.
Or
It's cleaner.
Okay, I like clean.
And it's more positive.
Right.
Well, again, you would be amazed. You would be amazed at what folks will do. They'll be like, well, I mean, we had an actual case where it said Show me in the rules where it says you can't defraud your clients. Show me.
Yeah, wow.
And we didn't have that. And they went, well, so that's why we have a whole unprofessional conduct section in the HLO rules. That's all mortar that we have found that we had to close between bricks
Yeah.
from all of our other programs. Okay, so
Well,
Same for C.
Yeah, same for C, in good standing. for A, B,
now
C,
my question is, do we, when we talk about an exterior entity, we can check in our database if something's in good standing. Do we have the authority to check that?
They can get a verification.
When they, right, oh, I see what you're saying. So
Do we have, because going across entities like that,
An active ATC.
Yeah. If you say have an active ATCS.
okay, and do we also want to say that, an active LAT in good
Well, isn't
standing?
good standing?
No, you can be, okay,
Yeah.
and let's be very clear about this. We have 3 statuses on our licenses. Active, and this has nothing to do with discipline. Active, inactive, and expired. Active means you are current. Everything's fine. Inactive means you've missed your renewal date and you are now inactive. However, you can be inactive for 3 years. If you want to get current, you got to pay all your late fees and all that stuff. Once 3 years goes by, you are expired and that license is dead and you have to reapply and meet all the current requirements. So that has nothing to do with discipline. Discipline, you might be on probation, you might be suspended, you might be revoked. That's a whole other thing. That's where the good standing comes into effect. If we say active, that means that your license is current. So if you want somebody to be current and in good standing, we have to add that language. Because the way we have it now, have an LCAT in good standing, you could be inactive. And, so if you want that,
I think that's important.
yeah,
and that's okay. If you want, now, once we start putting requirements on current entities, things can get a little yucky, but we could say have an active ATCS. Can we say in good standing?
I don't.
Is that how they,
because at the time that they submit this documentation for the ATCB, have you looked at the documentation they send? And do they say anything about good standing?
I have not seen it. Usually they only send the information we ask for. So usually they will just say, here's this person. Yes, this is the person. They don't send us a rap sheet or anything like that. I think it's just a certificate. The BACB is the same way. They just say, yep, this person is certified as of this date. That's it.
But then again, we're talking about someone who is licensed, and we're talking about their ethical requirements as well too. And if they're a supervisor, I think that's a higher level of ethical responsibility. So do we need to be able to, because we can't really enforce
Yeah,
them.
I would say no. I would just
I
say
think just have.
submit proof of an ATCS from the ATCB.
Yeah.
I think we need active.
Yeah, submit proof of an active ATCS from,
And then
Hopefully they use the same terms as us. That's the other thing that might be complicated. They might use good for, or, yeah, if you could tell me what their language is, because like we very specifically use active, inactive, and expired. I don't know what they use.
I'm on their website right now.
Yeah, if you're not a member, they really limit what you can see.
yeah, we can look at our studies. You want to just log?
I see, it says active,
Active.
because I just recently looked at it, it said active.
Should we say have, or should we say submit proof of?
Well, here's the thing. If we have a supervisory relationship and you have to document the supervisory relationship on a form, and you say the supervisor must, here's the question. I'm capturing it. It's kind of like the what, and then you get to the how, right? We have the how and the what's flying back and forth. The question becomes, where is the responsibility? You have, right? That's cool. We have a supervisory relationship and must submit documentation of the supervisory relationship in HLO form. Now, that could just be a form, and you list John Smith is your supervisor. On there, You can have them just attest, and this is up to you guys, attest to what box are we checking? This person has an active LAT in good standing, and then what you can do is back chain it and look at it from an investigation standpoint. If we have a complaint that this person is doing eye surgery with, the wrong credentials, what we would do is say, okay, we go back to the form and we say, okay, who was supervising you when you decided to do eye surgery? Okay, and then what we can do is back chain it and see if they had everything they needed to have.
Right.
And if it's okay with you, we can just have them attest to that rather, because every piece of paperwork people send to us, we have to keep in perpetuity. I
Yeah.
mean, our DocuWare is bursting, right? So if we can just say, okay, we can just say, here's this person, and if you want on the form, we could say, what's their license number?
Great.
Disco, and we're
I
there.
mean, yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. And then we outlined that now this is one thing that we talked about here and we wanted to ask you guys about. Y'all doing okay?
I was in a rabbit hole trying to figure out my password.
Oh, no, I got it.
No. I understand. I live in the rabbit warren. Like, I get it. I have so many passwords. The only person I can keep out of my accounts is me. The provisional art therapist, one of the things that we have come across at HLO, and I don't know how this works in the art therapy, but especially in environmental health, where you have to have 2 years of supervised experience in addition to the exam and the right kind of education, right? Everything you need for judgment, those 3 pieces. Well, somebody has a sickness in the family, somebody gets sick themselves, somebody gets pregnant, somebody moves away, someone has a hardship. And the old statutes, I could say this because we just changed them this session, said 3,840 hours, you are in the trench. You don't get a vacation. You don't get van life in Iceland. You are in the trenches for 2 years and that's it, right? Well, so what we try to do is soften that up and try to allow for, if it works within your profession, for life to happen. Is it possible to say, okay, it's good for a year, and ideally, you would have to renew it once and get your 2 years, but is it possible to open the envelope and say you can renew it 4 times if life gets in the way?
I think I'm not even sure that we need to have, because if you think of it in reality, there are some people who you only accrue hours if you're doing art therapy. And because of the nature of their practice, it can take a lot longer. And if they're still under the provisional art therapy, they're engaging in supervision. Does it matter? Do we need to have a time limit, or is 4 too? I think 4
Because
years is a little small.
well, some boards say, we don't want you, and we use trainee or intern in other professions. We don't want you to be a trainee forever. We want you to, some incentive to move on and take your exams and do what you got to do. Is that reflective in your profession? Do you need the envelope? What if somebody calls up and says, I can only, you can renew it once. That would give you 2 years, and oh, I'm pregnant and I can't keep doing, or I have to take care of somebody, and this happens.
Yeah.
Is it unrealistic or realistic to give somebody a maximum time?
The LPC associates.
One second, Josh, do we have any guests on the line? Okay.
The correction, have an active, not the active.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I think
Brain melt on, it's about to happen.
maybe 6 in terms of, and it's like we want people to do it sooner. and-
This is the limit.
Yeah.
Okay, you can renew X, and this is something, again, we talk about. Somebody says, okay, it's 2 years. What if you can only do part-time work? What if you're a mom? What if you get sick? What if something happens? We don't want to derail your career or have you hit what we call these time traps.
Yeah.
Where, okay, you renew twice. Now what happens?
Yeah.
Because some folks just have every bad thing in the world happen to them, but we don't want them to be accruing hours forever, or do we care? Maybe in your profession, you don't care.
We may not, just because there are these different paths that people take. And there are people who will focus on like getting the LPC first. And maybe they end up a job where they're doing the art therapy work a quarter of the time.
Right.
So
If you have to get 1,000 hours, that can take a long time.
Yeah,
They're
so I
working
think,
on call and only getting so many hours.
so yeah, I agree. I think we maybe
So you can just say and can be renewed, because
Yeah,
if we don't
can be.
say it,
Yeah.
you can't do it. So and can be renewed forever.
Good.
Okay, so if, and this is great, you guys are amazing. So again, and thank you all for getting along. Also not something, not something that happens in all of our racks. So we went ahead and we spiked out the reciprocity. Just because no one has ever come through that way.
So interesting.
And it's always been, here's my ATR, I'm good. You know, so the idea of paying for an affidavit of licensure to go around the block that way has just never happened. So, and we might get public comment that says, wait, no, I want to pay $50 and come around the long way, but it's just never happened since we've had this license. So,
It is an
Change
interesting
in
question.
some way as other states are having licensure.
Yes, that's one thing, is we're having a pretty linear increase in the number of state licenses for therapy, so it may be something that does come up.
But if ours is based off of the
ATR.
or whatever.
Then-
Yeah.
then
then
that would be
that's sure.
fine.
Yeah.
right, what we
It's gonna be-
tried to compare it to, and we may be wrong, but we have some, the BACB is one of them, the Behavior Analysis Certification Board, the dietitians are with the CDR, Commission on Dietetic Registration. You can go anywhere and wave that CDR card and here's your license. You don't have to pay $50 for an affidavit of licensure from Kentucky and then show us this and pay it. You can just show us this and you're good to go.
All right.
Okay.
And so if you got that,
That's a good fiscal impact.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and this is one of those things that we try to make it as simple and cost effective. And if there's a pathway that no one's using because it costs more,
Previous sections, and those.
yeah. So now with licensure, this just covers what licensing is all about. Instead of both, which we only had 2 before, now we have 3. Are subject to the provisions of regarding, and this we talked about, you know, I mentioned the OARs up above. Authorization to practice, identification, and requirements for issuing a duplicate license. If your dog eats your license, it's on special paper, you're gonna have to pay for it. Let's see, a licensee must, in order to renew, submit a renewal application form, a test. This is what we do on a renewal. We don't want your CEs unless you're audited, right? And you check a box that says, I'm current. And if you get audited, then you have to provide proof, right? And we have a national, just to bring you all up to speed, we have a national fingerprint check when you initially get licensed. That goes up to the big boys at the state police. Every year after that, we do a LEDS check, which is an Oregon check to see if you've committed any kind of crimes in Oregon that might affect your fitness to practice, right? That's the way it works. We talked about this. You just renew and you're good to go. If your license goes inactive, we describe what that is. You are not allowed to practice with an inactive license or use the title or a designation of art therapist. I think we have to include all of them here. Art therapist,
Licensed art therapist.
licensed. Oh, it's licensed art therapist. Look at us catching stuff. I swear, and I go through these things 50 times.
But
I
I'll
still
still
say
say
something here.
The law protects the use of the title.
Title,
art
yep.
therapist.
And it's licensed, certified. Or provisional. The provisional licensed. And again, yeah, this is just a great time to go through here and say, okay, what's still working? To renew an inactive, you have to renew, you have to attest to your continuing education, you have to pass your background check and pay your late fees. You okay?
Yeah, you don't need to be fingerprinted for the background check, it just,
Yes,
you do. need-
the initial license is a national criminal background check.
But not the renewal.
No, that's LEDs only. And what happens is we have, I used to work at the state police, I can tell you how this works. They check your name. You know that computer that cops have with the amber writing inside on the computer? That's LEDs. And that's tracking arrests and crimes that occur only in Oregon. So You're fingerprinted at first to catch anyone who's maybe coming from another state, run somebody over with a bus.
Yeah.
And then here we just check local arrests. Okay? So nothing really has changed except we're capturing all of the titles now. Continuing education. This is what I wanted to ask you guys about. The plats, they don't need to do CEs.
No.
Yeah, because we just have licensed art therapists and licensed certified art therapists. We have 8 hours of CEs every authorization year. Does that still make sense?
We have 8 for the license and then 2 is 12 hours for the certified. So we don't need.
Oh my God, thank you. You get the guardrail award, keeping me out of the ditch. Okay, so 8 years for the LATs, 12 for the LCATs. Is that still reasonable?
Yeah, and we do have some notes about something a little bit lower down.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what we have, because we have so many licensees now, we don't do pre-approvals. And we used to have programs that did that. People call up, hey, I have a class, and then we'd have to go over all the domains and everything with them. Now, we have some domains listed. And we've said, with assistance from RACs in the past, anything that covers this qualifies. Do we need to add or adjust any of these domains?
Well,
I guess that's 6. So we wanted to talk about 6 in self-study and what is meant by that.
Sure.
Because the way that CE sort of options post-COVID have really mostly shifted online. So the in-person CEs are more rare.
Gotcha.
The online is sort of standard now.
Okay.
So I think what was meant by self-study is someone can't just crack a book and say, I spent 12 hours reading it. They need to have documentation of a CE course.
instructor led
But we
or
want to make sure that we're not excluding online CEs.
I think the conversation from what I remember with Sylvie is self-study was meant to talk about someone who's working in an educational setting and has to write a self-study for the accreditation.
Right.
That, I think we've got 2 things that are commingled.
Yes.
We have a very specific definition, statutory definition that affects HLO and all of our programs of what continuing education is. That doesn't always match with like national certifications where you can teach, you can write a book, you can. Our idea is that you are sitting, standing, whatever works for you, and you are acquiring information. You are not taking something you already know and casting it into the world. So what self-study, and again, we have some professions here like tattooing, where, I mean, the opportunities at universities are somewhat limited, where self-study is accepted because you might be looking into bloodborne pathogens, or you might be looking into a new technology or something that no one really writes about, you know. But I think what we mean by self-study here is that you just decided one day to pick up this book and read it, and you want to count it. So it needs to be more, I think what I'm getting from you guys is online learning is acceptable. The big question is, and keep this in mind when we start going over this, if you are selected for audit and you have to cough up proof you were there, what would you be able to show? Certificate of completion, an agenda, attendance that you were there. You know, think about those kinds of things, and we can capture that here to get at, you know, we can take out self-study. What we could do is flesh out what the online picture would look like. Does that make sense?
Because you still get certificates online.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure that,
Okay, so why don't we take out self-study?
yeah.
Because that kind of blends with. Oh, hi, Tricia.
Trying to get myself off mute. There we go. Because we did just recently do an audit for art therapy. And when I spoke with Callie, our definition pretty much of self-study would be any courses that you would be completing individually at your own pace and your own schedule. if it's not live or interactive with an instructor. So if you do, kind of an online webinar with an actual instructor and there was other attendees and you could interact with the other people taking the course, that would qualify. But just logging on to a portal and reviewing, online material, that would be self-study, and that's what doesn't qualify. Just for a little clarification.
The problem with that is that there are a lot of, I look at like PESI, and there are a lot of organizations that provide online asynchronous programs where you are following along. You have to complete then usually an exam at the end to attest that you've completed the work and everything, but they are self-paced. And that has become a norm for a lot of mental health continuing education courses.
Yeah, the options for those kinds of dynamic courses, which are great, and I'd say make a good portion, but they have reduced significantly because the asynchronous has become sort of industry standard.
Even the Art Therapy Credentialing Board or the American Art Therapy Association provides self-paced continuing education courses, which align to exactly what we're looking
And
for.
it's actually more accessible for someone who's neurodivergent to be able to move at a pace and take the time with the material and not have to focus in the same way.
Okay, addressing subject matter. Continuing education hours don't include travel time. If we cut self-study and we just wrote research.
So if it helps, I have the LPC requirements just to read it.
Yeah.
So approvable continuing education credits may be obtained in the following ways. Continuing education activities with no limits on clock hours, attending college or university courses, live seminars, workshops, conferences, or training, home study, parentheses, distance learning, including internet and telecourses, services on boards, and then it goes through, publications and all of that. I don't know if we want to get deep into the weeds, but I think it is important that we define that home study or distance learning is appropriate.
As long as there's a CE attached with it, then it has met the requirements, like for NBCC or other.
I love going that path, saying that going where they must subject matter and have what's the word I want for NBCC for approval? It must be accredited for CEs or something like that. If we do that, then it doesn't matter the format.
See, but we've got to be careful with that again.
But not, it's
I
not
think it's just that
necessarily.
it provides a certificate of completion or CEU, something. Right, it's really what is
they would
needed.
need that
So it would have to be
already evidence.
continuing education.
Well, and remember, if we don't say you can't, you can't,
Right.
right? So while we ponder that, we did okay with the hours. Are these domains, A through F, still applicable?
Yes. Might be.
There's nothing you want to add. We can,
We could add, I mean, what do you think, Sarah?
I'm gonna look at it again.
We have psychotherapeutic theories and practice.
I know that this is based off of what ATCP
They've actually updated
list and they've updated it, and I think it might be helpful in just the multicultural competency is also like weird.
Right, good point. Right, because we sort of shifted away from that language.
And then I'm wondering, like, professional development, psychotherapeutic theories, like, I'm just thinking, like, there's so much on, like, risk assessment or, like, suicide, like, non-suicidal self-injury, like, is there something that we want to add that's a little bit?
We just want to find the new exam
You were just looking at that.
domains.
So Mary was just looking at that.
Yeah, we just.
the continuing education content areas here.
Yeah.
Is theoretical approaches, facilitation of treatment, administer and evaluate art therapy and art-based assessments, professional practice and ethical responsibilities, professional development and research, and administrative functions and program management.
I think that would, those capture some of those other areas that is a little less clear.
Should we just want to like professional development, comma, including program management?
We could make program management its own thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, so it doesn't.
One or more program management?
Maybe change C to reflect professional practice and ethical responsibility.
Well, we have ethics already.
Cool, should we change around psychotherapeutic theories and practices, just that they're.
Theoretical approaches.
What are we changing?
A, theoretical approaches.
So you want to get rid of this whole thing? Strike it?
Well, yeah. Nice thing about psychotherapeutic. Theoretical approaches.
Okay.
Especially,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay. But are we okay with adding program management?
Yeah. and
Cool.
Then I think the only remaining question is, do we keep multicultural competency or do we change that to multicultural or
Yeah, competencies.
Facility or.
humility as opposed to competency?
I think humility is a better word.
I don't know, something, there's competency that's clear.
I think intersectional humility makes more sense because it's not just about culture.
Yeah.
It's also about gender identity.
Right.
What was the word we used? Intersectional?
Intersectional.
Intersectional humility.
It's, remember that requires, like, the LPC requires that you have coursework and cultural.
I know cultural competency is a thing.
Yeah,
I think
you have to have like 4, you have to have like 4 hours of.
Oh, well, this is annual and that's.
Would be risk. Risk assessment.
These are options, not requirements, so it would be good to add, yeah.
One or more of the following. Where would that be on its own or?
Say, yeah, art therapy assessment, risk assessment, workplace.
Like treatment, something.
I think a facilitate treatment.
Facilitate treatment, so,
Treatment facilitation?
I think it's more like crisis, treatment facilitation or something.
Crisis intervention.
Crisis intervention and risk assessment.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, crisis intervention and risk assessment.
We make that separate?
Yeah.
Because we don't want you to, because folks will call up who are literal
Yeah.
and say it's got one, but not both.
So,
So risk assessment,
Yeah.
Would that include then substance use and suicide?
it could be.
all of that.
Art therapy research.
Yeah, research is not named and nor is administrative function.
Down
So
below.
down here, it says that research, authorship, teaching doesn't count.
What about research method? I guess not. Yeah, that's right.
Because the whole idea is, again, you sitting
It's clinical
and
practice.
learning.
Yeah.
And that has to do with our definitions of what continuing education are.
So then, if we're talking clinical practice, program management, how do we?
Well, if I'm a clinical director out of practice.
Right.
That's program
Useful.
management, I'm overseeing direct care
Okay.
and training of the staff.
We want to have an administrative function. Like program. It's program management. Okay.
Well, and again, these are, just remember, if you get audited,
Maybe we could do.
we want things as broad as possible because our continuing education auditors, including Tricia, are gonna have to, and we, if we do 10%, some of our boards that are tens of thousands of people, that's a huge lift.
Yeah.
So the more broad and general, we want to get to what we want to get to, but we don't want to make Trish sit there and go, does this meet intersectional humility? Like, because again, we talk definitions. And we look that up in the dictionary and we don't know if it matches. When we get into these like really specific terms, the broader, better it is for licensees. And the better it is for staff.
Yeah.
Can we add supervision?
Yeah.
But is that part of teaching, like supervision, your help?
No, we're talking clinical
Clinical
supervision, like this.
Oh, okay.
So
Training.
that's required for AET for the BC anymore, is you have to have CEs and supervision.
Okay, yeah.
So are we adding, or are we not?
So,
Yeah.
yeah, like professional supervision training.
Yeah. Good catch.
Okay. That gets us there.
We need to specifically call out, client populations with disability.
Yeah, it covers everything.
Okay, so we took care of the online piece. We're still pondering that.
Because they require, the ATCB requires 6 hours in ethics and 6 hours in supervision.
Right.
Let's see, checking periods number.
And again, if you guys are doing most of your stuff online, but we include, this is boilerplate language because we do have folks that go to these big conferences for 3 days and they CE like crazy. And when you check them, they went to one class, but then they also hung out and they did some other stuff and they want to count all that. So even though it might seem silly, it's there because people have tried to say, well, tell me I can't, right? So we try to put the guardrails right in. Again, at renewal, you attest
Yep.
that you are 5 by 5. And if you are selected for audit, oh, and we also, this is new language, because we have some, not within your group, but we have had incidences where folks are like, hey, I live out of state. I don't have to get my seat. There's all this stuff. And so we have as long as you're maintaining your organization,
Yep.
we don't care if you're living in Nevada. You have to do your Cs.
Yep.
Okay. And they're in effect even when the authorization is inactive. So when you want to get current, you have to be able to show that you have been, even though you didn't keep up with your license, you kept up with your CEs, which some folks get in trouble with. We did make a change in the audit. We are trying to standardize. One of the things, again, we have 20 boards and programs now. Staff hasn't changed. So we're trying to, as things go, we get more information from the DOJ. We learn more stuff about program administration. And we're trying to standardize some of these processes. And back in the day, we used to say that we do a percentage, usually it's 10% of licensees. If you spin the wheel and you come up for audit, we notify you that you're being audited, and then we used to say 45 calendar days to submit documentation. We're trying to standardize that to 30. Okay, that gives you 30 days. If we have what you need, you got your certifications and everything, it shouldn't be a big deal. And we're just trying to bring that into alignment, all of our programs. Again, proof that you were there, you have certificate of completion, anything that you could say, yes, I was there, whether it's something that you printed out from a course online or from a school or whatever, just prove you were there. And these are all options. Again, includes, but is not limited to. And we are trying to flex every opportunity here. Does that kind of sound reasonable to you guys?
I want to make sure. Yeah, so it says includes, but it's not limited to. I think some people might read that as they need all of these things. But they might need more. So I think if these are options,
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can just wordsmith it to make that clear. Because obviously the most common thing is going to be the certificate.
How about can include?
Yeah.
May include,
May include,
because that gives you an option.
yeah.
May include, but is not limited to. And again, if people are unsure, people who want to do the right thing, pick up the phone and they call us.
Yeah.
Or they talk to Callie and they say, okay, I got this or this or this. What's funny is the people that are always in compliance are the most concerned about it. The people that aren't always in compliance, like, don't answer the letter. Like, maybe it'll go away. One of the changes that we want to make, and again, this is all flexible depending on where you got your CEs from. We are trying to standardize our CE penalties, because especially since you guys don't have a board And whenever you have a board, you have an option for one person is super strict and wants to bring the hammer of justice down, and the other person is like, well, what if they're a single mom, you know? And so that you can have this flux. So the proposal was, you got two, if you are not keeping up with your CEs, you've got two problems. One is you weren't keeping up with your required CEs when you renewed, and the other one is you falsified your renewal when you checked that you did. That is a legal document. That's an affidavit. So we propose a $500 civil penalty for failure to meet the required CEs and $1,000 for falsifying information on your renewal. That was proposed from leadership. What do you guys think?
It's an increase from 500 to 1,500.
So I looked at like currently the case of self-study, quote unquote, right? So then you no longer meet the requirements, so therefore you've done the CEs, but under the current rules.
Oh, but that would be different. Just let me stop you right there. If you got your CEs before these rules change, whatever rules were in place at the time is what you have to follow. That's why we have these lines in the sand.
So
Yeah.
the changes now will affect.
January
Yeah,
on.
but I'm saying in that instance where where, going back to intent, when your intent was when you believed you were doing, when you were following the channels, and it was an inadvertent or a misunderstanding of the rules or something, then you have a $1,500 penalty plus the cost of the new CEs that all have to be done within the 3 months. Is that an undue burden then on someone who was trying to follow the rules? So that goes back to the inaccuracies, right?
I guess the question I have is, what is the time period of having to pay out this 1,500? Is it also 3 months where they also have to be paying for all of these CEUs?
You know, if you falsified your renewal and you didn't get your CEs, and again, we like to produce, as strict as we are, we also use what's called the reasonable person standard. Okay, would a reasonable person under these circumstances do these things, right? I am not the regulatory gods. I believe, it is my understanding that over a certain amount, you get on a payment program, plan. I don't know what that is. There might be, we do have a certain amount of discretion. In cases, you know, I'm not exactly sure, but it's one of these things where I don't think we're gonna come and repossess your dog, right? But we're trying to make it clear that these are requirements, and we're trying to standardize the penalties for this across. We have some boards that are like, oh, you know, it's fine, and some are like, heck no, you broke the law. And the other thing that's coming into the picture is if you are not keeping up your CEs, you technically don't qualify to renew. So some boards have gone so far as, should we suspend somebody's license because they technically didn't meet the requirements to renew? And so there's that picture into it too. And so we're kind of trying to find a balance between making sure people do what they need to do, having a penalty that not only, you know, also covers the cost of discipline, which is expensive. And then it's a deterrent, and we're trying to standardize it. And it's just, I don't think, and I think Trish could probably speak to this, but we get a variety of responses. She's been doing a lot of CE audits. We have some folks that are like, I thought this qualified. Okay, or oh my God, this kind of thing. I took 75 and I thought I had all this. And then the people who ignore our letters. And then they're the ones that attest that they did and they went, oh, but you know, I'm gonna retire, here's my license. Okay, now what do we do? I mean, you broke the law, but you're willing to submit surrender your license. So it gets complicated in this. And this was just a proposal. Our current director was a 12-year regulatory manager. And he was kind of like, this seems reasonable, but
Well, here's, and I completely understand that logic. Here's where I would devil's advocating.
Great, do it.
Is that this license is really sort of a paradigm shift for a lot of people. And they're currently managing 3 different credentials. Some are managing 4. And so there's just a cognitive load issue for a lot of these people. There's
Okay.
less negligence and more, we are adding
Okay,
things to what is already multiple other credentials.
okay.
And so I think that's a reason for leniency at this time, is to say, or like 500 is already a hit for people, right? And so adding another 1,000 on top.
Well, what do you, the experts, what would you, knowing what our goal is to standardize, and also these folks are using a license they don't technically have the right to use, and they falsified a document. What do you think with the cognitive load, which is a thing, right? What would be reasonable?
So it would be, if it's a deterrent, would it 200 and would even just reducing it in half, would that be like a $250 civil penalty or an overall 1,000 penalty for both? Or what are you guys' thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, Tricia's wanting to say something.
Yeah, Tricia, what you got?
I could be wrong on this, but when I worked up in licensing, from what I recall, if it's $1,000 or more, regulatory will offer a payment plan. If it's less than that, they're paying it all at once. So you might want to factor in, how people can pay based on the amount.
That is incredibly helpful, Tricia. Thank you.
I think that makes more sense.
But are they paying it to at the same time? Are they
Yeah.
separate bills and?
No,
what's that look
that's,
like?
you'll get what's called a notice of intent. And that says, on these dates, we investigated, we found you violated, here are the facts of the case, right? CSI style. And say, you'll be assessed this and this. And the person can pay it, they can call, they can appeal it and go before an ALJ. And if so, if they lose, they've got to pay our legal fees. It's one of those things. They can push it. We're the government. You can appeal anything.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
And you can appeal. We've had cases not from your program. You guys are all blameless creatures, that have gone all the way to the Supreme Court, Oregon Supreme Court, and they bankrupted a board.
So I think that my question is somewhat in line with like what Trish was saying, like $1,000 or more. Does each one have to be hitting that or collectively
It's
hitting?
my understanding it's a total. Maybe Tricia can argue, but in some cases where somebody is assigned, if it's egregious, and then you can get all the way into suspension, revocation, that kind of thing. We're just trying to come up with something standard so we don't have to go to our subject matter experts. We don't have to worry if we're treating people differently.
So I would say that a failure to meet the CE hours feels like it's less of a major crime to me
Yep.
than to falsify documents.
So maybe like 250, 750
I would agree with that more so than
or
500.
250, 500 or something.
I think 750. I mean, I would also probably say 500 and 1,000 made sense to me to really deter people from going down.
Yeah, we have had, just to let you know, we've had some folks, not from your group. I mean, again, you have to remember, we deal with so many people who have said, well, you know what? It's cheaper to pay the fine than it is to get my CEs. Now, one could argue, or that they do the same thing sometimes with, we've had to up our civil penalties over time. Because if you defraud a client, it can be extremely profitable. Just pay the fee, pay the fine, and just move on with your life, And so we want it to be a deterrent, but we don't want it to be crushing,
So is this considered then a disciplinary action
Yes.
that gets reported to the NPD?
Do you guys have I'm not sure if you guys are reporters to the National Practitioners Data Bank, but any penalty, I think, has the potential. I can't speak for 100%, because again, I'm not in the regulatory world, but I do know some of our boards do, any disciplinary action would be reported to but again, I would have to check with regulatory.
still an increase, still doubling. But it really shows, do not falsify.
Well, and also continue to practice with a license did not qualify to renew for.
Right.
So there's that other piece that you have to recall. And people think it's, I just didn't do it. I didn't feel like it. And then there were some folks who argued, actually, I had a RAC just last week. They said, why can't we just do CEs every 2 years? It'd be so much easier. And I said, the problem is your renewal is annual.
Yeah.
So if you're planning on doing your renewals the end of next year, you're checking that you did them.
Yeah.
And if you didn't do them, you can't check that you did,
Yeah.
you know,
that makes
and bringing that home to people is sometimes shocking to them. They're like, and then in order to renew, you need to do these things. You renewed, you don't have them, you know. So what do we, are we okay with that?
3 months is a reasonable amount of time. So, okay, so what, I guess my question now is what happens? So let's say they don't complete or they're found that they didn't do the CEUs, this penalty happens, they have 3 months to correct it. So in that time frame, they still have an active license from the health licensing board, or does that get suspended, paused, like?
That is something we would have to check. It's my understanding, I think, that, you know, until, and again, this is not my forte, right? This is the regulatory world. I'm on the other side. And maybe Tricia can speak to this. It's my understanding that you're notified that you're getting audited. You have 30 days from that notification to get us the documentation, right? And we will go over it. And if you don't have it within that period, then you're going to get the penalty. There has been some conversation of if you don't have it, is your license technically suspended? And if so, do we need to put that in rule? And that's been a conversation that's been going on with some other boards, like what happens? But it's my understanding that while this is going on, and don't quote me, I'd have to go to regulatory, I think people can continue to work. But that's a gray area because, you know, you would,
And ethically, I mean, if you're like, well, this happened and all of a sudden someone has to disrupt all their therapeutic relationships, I think that would be a harm to the public. And that they're gonna manage this cost and that's gonna happen. I think that makes sense that we would immediately suspend.
no, but I mean, it is something that as we get more down into this, and what does this really mean? And then what? And you guys are really good with this, and then what? Okay, and then what? You didn't do what you needed to do. And a lot of it, you know, you look at intent too. Were they trying to do the right thing? Was the reasonable person standard followed? Yes. I sent you a certificate for my other certification, you know, my LPC or whatever. Here, let me get this for you. I mean, most people have what they need. Some people don't do anything. Somebody was talking to a staff member. Tricia, go ahead.
Well, I just noticed this one, and I don't know if this is a new part to the rule that you guys added, but it does say after the portion that you bolded that any missing CE hours must be obtained within 3 months from the date of that final order. And that's something that's not in all of the rules. So it looks like, yes, they'll get their letter saying they're being audited. If they don't respond within the 30 days, they are going to have another 3 months from the date of that final order to get in those needed CEs.
Right, and I think we added that in, Tricia, because the idea
Okay.
was, this was the thought. Tell me what you think. We don't want people thinking, okay, fine, I paid, now I'm done with that and I can start on my new CEs. No, you have to get caught up. You can't just start taking stuff and count it backwards and forwards at the same time.
It's just a quick thought. Can we then make the penalty go into play if they do not get 3 months?
That's what happens. That's what happens. I mean,
So you're not, if you get the notice of intent and you do 3 months, then you don't end up paying.
well, it does say, now there's a comma, a $250 civil penalty for failure to meet the required CE hours will be assessed, a $750 civil penalty for falsifying information, and they must obtain the missing CE hours within 3 months. So it's money and you gotta get them within 3 hours, or three months, because that, you can't just, okay, pay and you don't do them.
Right, the problem is,
You're asking us a question.
the problem is if the standard is if you get audited, you have 3 months, then that's just what people are gonna do. They're like, oh, I got audited, I get to do my fees in 3 months.
So maybe is it? Yeah, okay,
So I
I'm
think
just,
you're, it is, yes,
Yeah.
I see where, I'm right there with you. It's gonna sting for some. And there's responsibility on us to get the word out.
Yeah.
To make sure that people know
No.
what is expected.
Right.
I mean, there's things you guys have to do, there's things that we have to do. So I'll just propose that to leadership and I'll put an asterisk on that and make them aware of that. And Tricia, thank you for the guardrail. Again, satisfactory evidence, yes, ma'am.
Go back,
Yeah, we sure can.
on page 7. Can you explain why teaching or producing does not count?
According to Oregon's definition of continuing education, which we have to use, it's a very narrow definition. And it is you sitting or standing or pacing or whatever it is you do, receiving information. You convey, and it's a much narrower definition than national associations and things like that, which is why sometimes they ask you for 75 and we ask you for 10, you know, that kind of thing. Because we have you are absorbing information. You already have the information and telling other people doesn't count. You like writing a book about what you already know doesn't count. The idea is to move you forward in the professional work. And that's just because, again, we have some of our associations that are like, yeah, you need 75 hours. You can teach, you can write a paper, you can participate in research, you can do all these other things. We have such a narrow band. That's why we ask for much fewer
Exactly.
numbers. Does that make sense?
Okay, don't look.
I know it's hard for all of this stuff to get traction, right? Again, fraud, misrepresentation, deception, constitute grounds for disciplinary action. Include, but is not limited to civil penalty, suspension, or revocation. We know all of those things. Now, standards of practice. I added, we just had before an art therapist, right? But now we have licensed art therapist, licensed certified art therapist, and professional. I included them in the standards of practice. If you guys think it is appropriate. Again, when we talked about dropping a line, yes.
Provisional licensed art therapist?
Yeah.
I think it just says.
Oh, provisional art therapist licensed. Thank you very much, Magic Voice.
I'm wondering if there's anything that needs to be done in terms of just ordering, because provisional is like the first step, then licensed art therapist is second, licensed certified art therapist. Matters and all in the read of.
Let me think about that because anything we change, let me see, because I think I was trying to follow the flow of the licensing. You know, we have the license and then the provisional was the third one got added.
And I'm wondering if that's just because it was added, but technically it's the first step in the order and maybe.
Right. Let me see. I mean, it makes sense to you and it sort of makes sense to me, except, you know, some people are already out there, you know. Yeah, we would have to completely renumber everything. So let me see how that flows, but that's a great idea. We currently require the therapist to comply with confidentiality, all laws regarding the practice. Now, like I said, we drop a line in the sand. We can't just say, it terrifies me when states do this. Whatever the current, ethical requirements are of the association, just go by that. Well, if they change, who knows that, right? And so we say we are adopting this code of ethics, part 1, sections 1 and 2, revised. This is the exact one. Now, I contacted the ATCB to see if, because again, I'm not a member, so getting through the portal is a little bit of a struggle, if they had a more updated standard. The only one I saw was still 2018, and I emailed them and asked them, hey, do you have anything new? And they never responded to me.
They do.
They do have an updated one
Hmm.
on their website right now.
Yeah, well, I didn't see it.
And I mean, the concerns make so much sense. I think it's just,
Yeah, because you can't expect someone to obey a rule that changed and they didn't know about it.
yes.
So this-
Should we update it to the most recent one?
Should we just state the abide by, how do you say current?
You cannot do that. Absolutely not, because if it changes tomorrow, who the heck is gonna know what current is? Our investigators, if an infraction occurs and the standards change in the middle, which policy are licensees having to follow?
So my question is then, if it changes every year, how does this get revised up here?
We have to change the rules.
Right, so
Right
how do
now,
you
we're
do
saying
that?
you have to open rules and do it.
Okay, so,
You have to go through rulemaking.
But I mean, how does HLO know? Someone has to initiate.
Or let us know. I mean, usually with boards, they will tell us something good, something new is coming. However, as we learned with the BACB, the updated standards are not always something that we can adopt because, and here's the other thing. Whenever we have standards like this, the DOJ goes through it to make sure that there isn't anything in there that it runs counter to Oregon law, which is extremely common. The BACB was one of them where chapter 11 through, it was like pledge allegiance to the BACB, blah, blah, blah. You cannot require people to do that. So if you change this now, you have to make sure that this is not something that's going to run counter to Oregon law. And I didn't have access to the new one.
So it was, let's see,
So what's?
Yeah, the one I saw posted was still,
5.
when was it?
There's a new, I think it's 2025, but they were accepting proposal changes
Yeah.
to March.
Yeah, that's not-
Seeing-
Yeah.
They don't have the date.
They defer to the ethical principles for art therapists.
Yeah, because the one I looked up when I was doing this draft was still 2018. And when I called them about changes, they did not respond.
So I
What is that?
emailed asking this exact question on September 27th.
Well, yeah, it sounds to me like they don't have anything finalized. If,
They have it on their website, they just don't have a new date with it. It's not dated, is our problem, so we don't have. any
Has it been?
To go to.
has it been ratified and everything?
I know it. Okay.
so,
Well, it's the 2025 revisions, but it hasn't been like published yet.
That's a problem. So what we could do, because I'm extremely nervous to just update something with that, because I've had so many codes of conduct. Another thing that sometimes these organizations run into is they write things in a paragraph form. And if we are going to cite somebody, we have to be able to cite chapter, line, verse, and sometimes they have it all blended together and it can be very, very difficult to enforce, right? So until we see that, what you guys can do is, you know who I am, right? We could stick with what we have here, which has been approved and it's all fine. Let me know when something goes through, probably on a different timeline, because like I said, as far as putting this into practice, we are running out of time,
Yeah.
right? We could chase it later on. And if you say, okay, there's a new one that comes out, I can take it, I can run it through the channels, and then we can open rules.
and I know the director of the HCCB, so I could probably get a hold of it in the next week or two. And just say, if there's a finalized codified document, send that to us, otherwise we're gonna go with the 2018.
Yeah, it might, just to let you know, it might be difficult depending on how big it is. And we have 4 DOJ attorneys now that are just up to their eyeballs. They would, whenever we're looking at something like that, they have to compare it to the Oregon Constitution. They have to compare it in a lot of places. It might take, get it to me as soon as you can. It might take so long
But I
that
don't
we would
think-
have to chase this section with that.
Yeah, alright,
Which we can do. If it comes out and I can send it to them, and what's nice is we don't have a board, right? So I can just open this up, propose it
yeah,
We just have to make sure there's nothing in there that runs counter to Oregon.
So this gets, whatever, we send this through as is, and then say in March of
Let me know.
2026, we send it to you, this is the new thing, you run it through all the.
I can run it through the channels, and if they, well, and what we will do, fun seekers, is that we will have another rules advisory committee, because something that big, you don't do unilaterally,
Yeah.
right? You get your fun seekers back together and you say, okay, let's go through this. And you compare what you want to get at with, maybe there's sections we can't enforce. You know, like I pledge allegiance to the ATCB, you know, we can't do that. No, and there are some ethical codes that have that. You know, I will stand in defense of this organization, come hell or high water. We can't do that. So I will promote the profession and no. So we would have to go through and say, okay, that's why we have certain sections outlined that we can do. Okay?
Okay,
So I have another, oh, sorry.
so it would just open up a rules and
We would
committee again.
send it in, we'll send it to the channels, we'll send a note out saying, hey, we got updated standards, we got some sections that we can look at. We get our kids back together again, we go through it and we decide, and you know what? New is not always better. You know, you just say, this is muddying the water on some issues. We can take these, but not this. And we would actually work that by itself.
Okay, great.
Okay, so yes, Mary.
Page 1.
Yes.
Strategies, something.
I
Couple questions, couple
Yeah.
things there.
We need to add G and H.
Yep.
And add licensed credentialed art therapist.
Great.
So there is a
Or if there's a licensed art therapist and provisional licensed art therapist, but there's no licensed credentialed.
Yeah, we have up above, we have art therapist means a licensed art therapist or a licensed certified.
However, to be consistent,
Okay.
we need to define our therapist as a provisional licensed art therapist, a licensed art therapist, because we're talking about, we need to be clear there, and then, like Mary said, add G, H, and I. Because in multiple places, we reference licensed art therapist as meaning the ATR or the LAT. I mean, so we need to be very clear that all, whatever, that our therapist equals all three, and then all three are distinctly spelled out under fee structure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and you know what? That was something that I did before I came in here and then I changed my mind. So you want to have, you want to go ahead and have that called out specifically.
I think for clarity, it makes sense.
Hey, and you know what? I thought that, and then I saw the definition up top, and went, oh, no, I'm fine. Okay, so this is licensed certified?
And to Sarah's point, we could put provisional at the top just for chronological clarity.
We could, but let me just see if that messes up the flow
Yeah.
of like all of, and okay, and here's the other thing that you guys don't have to worry about, but I do. If we move things around, we might have to end up renumbering. And that can put things, you can't just take something and move it.
Right.
You have to renumber it, and I'm running out of numbers. Not something you have to worry about, that's my problem. But I'm actually running out of numbers under the 331, and so I'm kind of a little reluctant, because I would have to, what I'd have to do is you can't renumber it, you have to repeal it and readopt it as a number. This is,
And then,
Okay.
so.
art therapist means,
And so that needs to be all three.
okay, cross this out. Or and, or a licensed provisional.
No, provisional licensed.
Thank you.
First.
Awesome. You guys are amazing. Okay, and see, you get it, and thank you so much. Okay. Whew. So all the renumbering and all the relettering is my problem, not yours. I'll take a look at the order. Now, I know we're over time, and I apologize for that. If you guys can hang, I can hang. We gotta do the fiscal and the racial impact. Do you need me to bring those slides back up? So can we do the fiscal impact first? What have we got?
I mean, there's gonna be a little bit of extra work potentially on the HLO or the plat. But think that may be covered by the application.
It's generally, yeah, that's okay. But other, I mean, we assume that we're administrating, it's fine. Are there any other units of government that be affected by these rules? Any other, okay, because it's not always, it's just a potential to get you thinking.
It might affect them in terms of reducing the burden on MACBO. Or
Bo,
the mental health and.
Yeah, mental health.
okay, so reduce the fiscal burden.
Right now.
Yeah.
Those that want, that are on the art therapy track have to get a QMHP, which is from that. I don't know, I don't know, if it's the levy board or whatever you were calling, whatever it's called.
I don't know what MACBO is.
I'm looking at, what's the,
It's MH.
Oh, MH, is that quality mental health provider?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why would it reduce the,
Our masters in art therapy people, when this was not available to them, were required to get that license in addition. To be able to be,
and they said that they think it's duplicating efforts. And so they're waiving first wave of that. So I don't know if this will affect it, considering they're doing that, but it may make it easier for them.
I'm not sure exactly. but
so
I know that-
reduce the burden on QMHP because they won't have to oversee these individuals?
right,
Yeah, now we have
Okay.
provisional.
Will this have any financial impact on reducing LPC or LPCA applications or licensing?
we,
Necessarily, so we get.
once we get the insurance in place, we suspect that people will not need to get the LPC because we'll be able to get reimbursed for our art therapy specific license. So that's kind of long-term fiscal impact.
Yeah, that's okay. So, having the rules that we're doing here, the plat. Trying to think,
As
is that directly related to our rules or
It
is it?
specifically aligns with on the law, with. Let's see, where's my,
Yeah, if we get into compensation, that's kind of, although, what we can, what we often hear is that, licensure allows these individuals, these plats, to potentially seek reimbursement, which would help them,
Right.
kind of thing.
We were saying, and we feel that this would reduce the administrative burden on them getting additional licenses. Because it really streamlines them to the art therapy
Okay.
training and practice.
Licenses,
yeah,
let's see, if now individuals who are gonna apply for the plat, does this give them, I mean, is this mainly just a conduit or would this give them opportunities to seek higher licensure or compensation?
Yes.
And individuals, this is, and think about, we do rules, the DMV. I mean, that's gonna affect everybody, right? So this is more of a specific, giving people a pathway to higher licensure, more compensation. And it's gonna reduce burdens on like the QMHP and.
And they won't need to hold multiple licenses
Oh,
eventually.
we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't even put that in because we have to go further with it before that's really gonna be true. I think it,
But hey, if you don't have to hold the
That's what we're aiming
QMHP.
That's what we're aiming for. Is
Oh, sure. So while you're thinking about that, what about the racial equity?
These are services, increases access to services due to increased number of providers.
Um,
Higher quality services due to supervision requirements.
So access, quality, more providers. So folks, you know, whenever we have more providers, it's not like the top tier, either private pay or the top tier insurances are getting covered, right? Like usually if there's more providers, there's folks on different tiers that have access to services. So anything else? I know we're running over time. I'm so sorry. Bless you. And if you think of something after you leave, you can send it.
Well,
I mean, this law itself, right, is stating that there is that clause for CCM.
Right.
And so that to me would be opening up that access a lot more.
Mentions reimbursement. Health providers, and there's providers and clients.
Because it also applies to the provisional license where it's before the person.
get into the like weeds of how art therapy is beneficial to marginalized individuals, or is that
Oh, yeah,
false?
I'm saying, you know, art therapists provide skill set that allows effectiveness of therapy for people for which English is a second language, or for which have
Neurodivergency.
other, you know, based communication difficulties.
Neurocognitive challenges.
It's fantastic.
Make it neurocognitive, but that's just me being
Neurocognitive,
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you for spelling.
NEURO.
Is that a hyphen or one word?
It's all weird, just like that.
Oh. Okay. Does that kind of get us there? Because if so, I can help. We could probably wrap up the meeting and we can talk about maybe hooking you up with the right part of OHA that you asked for at the very beginning.
Yeah, let's do that.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm noticing top level.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like there's something we're missing, but I don't know what it is. So
If you think about it after you leave, trust me, I've got to go through, clean all this up, do some deep thinking and run it by some of our quality assurance checks. And just kind of step away from it and get a reboot and then come back and look at it again. You know, you have to kind of fresh eyes it. And if you think of something after you leave, please add it because I want to be as clear and complete as possible. Not because I have to, but because it's the right thing to do. All right. So we will save this. And if we want to wrap up, we can, and then I can play the Google game for you guys. Thank you, Tricia.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. She's so great.